That's all it is. But there's a lot of airspace to cover for Milroe. Still looking. Firing. Near corner. It's caught! Touchdown, Alabama! Isaiah Bond! On a 4th and a mile!
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Power formation, everybody lined up close to the football. Benson, first down, still running. Trey Benson, all the way to the end zone. Hat-trick touchdown for Benson.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Another blitz. One-on-one for Neighbors. He's got it! Touchdown! Oh, my goodness. By Malik Neighbors!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Ray Davis. Here goes Ray! Say goodbye to Ray! Into the end zone! And the Cats are in control!
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Epps motions. Retzlaff's throw. It's brought in by the tight end Rex, and then taken away by Oklahoma State, and that's the ball game.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Single receiver to the left. Beck with a low snap, but handles it. Fires far side. Ball is caught. And K-State needs to make the stop, and they don't. They lose contain, and he's down the sideline. Jalen Knoll will score for Iowa State. They have the lead with 8:04 to go.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Monday. 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and thank you. Hope you've had a really good holiday stretch. Some of you, maybe you had to work a little bit. We had our pregame show Saturday. Some were able to get a little bit further away for a longer amount of time to kind of get a deep breath. And then yesterday, as we expected, decisions, coaching decisions. Let's start with Baylor. Baylor announced that Dave Aranda will be back for one more year. He has, of course, years left on his contract. There was about a 50-50 split, depending on who you talk to. Would he be back? Would they look for somebody else? Craig and Paul, Dave Aranda back with a little bit of a change here and there for 2024.
I'm not surprised. You know, we were doing the post-game show the other night, and people were calling up saying, hey, give us a list of replacement candidates. And I said, look, I'll throw out some names that fit, but, like, I'm not comfortable getting into it because I honestly don't think that it's going to change and we don't know. And, you know, that's not what the people wanted to hear. They wanted Dave Aranda gone. That's what the fans wanted at Baylor. That's not what happened. Jeff Grimes is gone. He's not going to be the offensive coordinator. That means probably Eric Mateos is going with him. We'll see about that. Dave Aranda is going to be much more involved in the defense, essentially calling it this year. So there's going to be there's some changes that are going to go on, and we'll see who the offensive coordinator is going to be. But Dave Aranda stays, and it's because Mack Brown believes he's the guy to get the program back on track, and we'll see how that works out over the next year.
Mack Rhodes believes, not Mack Brown.
Yeah, Mack Rhodes.
Yeah, Mack Brown. That'd be a good, nod from another head coach, a little backing there. But, first, let me ask you guys, do you think if that game would have gone the way that it looked like it was going to go in the first half and it ended that way rather than them having this chance to win at the end, like let's say they got beat by 28 points like they were well on their way to, do you think the decision was the same?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all felt like going into this weekend that he was going to be around no matter what, really. And it did look like that game against West Virginia was going to get really ugly early on in the first half, but, Richard Reese obviously made that a game all on his own shoulders, and, the rest is history with another heartbreaking way to lose. So here we are, and now we at least have some clarity. I mean, that's how I took the news more than anything else, is just, hey, it's good to know kind of what we're going to be talking about and who we're going to be talking about for the most part, and that is year 5 for Dave Aranda. I know the fan base is very split on this, if not tilted in the negative as far as feeling about or how they're feeling about, another year with Aranda at the helm. But you got the shakeup at coordinators. I mean, the defense is entirely on his shoulders now. He's going to be the guy calling plays and running the defense. That's smart. I think that's what you have to do. The change on offense with coordinators, Jeff Grimes being on his way out. I think, for all the Jeff Grimes fans that there might be, or even if you're like myself, you thought he did a good job, they needed a shakeup on that side of the football. I think that was pretty apparent that they weren't even equipped to run the type of offense that he really wanted to, and it was feeling stale, and they needed to press the reset button there. So, quite frankly, that's all Aranda could really do. They could, in theory, change their quarterback or change certain personnel, but they're shaking it up with coordinators. We'll see if that's enough, but he's run out of any other reasons for why this thing isn't working. NILs is also going to be a bigger factor. So, it's all on him this upcoming year, and I know it's going to be a long year, a long off season and plenty of other changes to take note of, but I'm not surprised by the moves themselves either, and I think they could be beneficial, but I just don't know how much of a turnaround you expect from this year to next year and what will need to be done to save his job for year 5, you know?
I don't know how much, enhancing NIL, that's a long-term move.
Right.
In the long term, it's a good idea, and it might help you a little bit in the short term, but the fact is that they probably need 3 or 4 offensive linemen to make sure that Blake Shapen, to me, if I'm Blake Shapen, I want them, if I commit to staying, I want to do that knowing that I'm not going to get absolutely wood chippered every game next season. And plus, I'm running out of eligibility. I don't even know if this is going to be good. If I can go somewhere and possibly win, I might do that anyway, because I think for a guy like Blake Shapen, NIL is going to be the same whether he stays at Baylor or goes to Duke or something.
Yeah, I think Blake Shapen needs to look at his options, whatever those may be. I also think the new OC rolling in might want another option than Blake Shapen or Sawyer Robertson or whoever else you might be looking at on that roster like RJ Martinez. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions. Just the one thing we know is Aranda's back. That's the big piece of the puzzle that we weren't sure about. We know that Aranda's coming back. There were a lot of eye rolls, a lot of anger with that news breaking yesterday, because a lot of people had set themselves up for the idea that he was going to be fired. But, like we all said last week, we all felt like pretty much no matter what, he was going to stick around. So that's the way it turned out. Hate it for Jeff Grimes. Hate it for Matt Powledge that it's a little bit of a demotion, even though he'll maintain that DC tag. But they had to do something, obviously, after the way this season went. And without firing your head coach, this is about what you can do, changing both coordinators, putting the defense on your own shoulders, and then going out there and trying to play in the portal. But as we know, everybody else is playing in those waters too. So, hopefully you get a good amount of bang for your buck, but you can't afford this class didn't work out, so we need to run it back, or, this guy, we thought it was going to. No, you don't have any of that anymore. You have to win, and you have to start showing massive improvement right now.
Well, and I have brought up the coordinator stuff in front of even Dave Aranda. I've asked him, you're going to be that guy, that Will Smith meme? You're the only one left in the room? Well, I was given some piece of information. Kyle Whittingham at Utah has been, wouldn't you all say, very successful?
Yes.
He has been through 9 offensive coordinators. I don't know how many of those 9 took jobs that are better. Utah's pretty good. They're a top 25 program, but he has been through 9. Now, there's a lot that haven't been through much. As Saban, Kirby Smart, those, Mac Brown, when he was at Texas, went through a few, but a lot of times they also were better jobs they moved on to. That has not been the case, although Dave Roberts at Auburn might say otherwise.
Ron Roberts at
Auburn.
I've seen a lot of how many coordinators are you going to hire and fire? As many as it takes? Until he gets the plug pulled, he's going to do whatever he can, and he's going to fire and hire 6 of them if that's what it takes, and that's what he's going to do. But, they started off with Larry Fedora. It was a bad hire. It was during the COVID year, and that did not work out well, and everybody knew it, and they cut bait very quickly. So, hey, there's your mulligan, I guess. But I mean, let's not act like Jeff Grimes was just here for a cup of coffee. He's been here for 3 years, guys, right? I mean, he's been here for 3 seasons. So, there was a thought there for a while that he was going to be off to be a head coach, that they were going to have to try and retain him because his stock was going to be so high, especially after the 2021 season. So, he had a good run, but I mean, did y'all think the offense was going to get any better next year? And absolutely not. I mean, you have your best player who's running 2 kickoffs back to even make it a game on Saturday, and you can't find a place for him on your offense.
Speaking of which,
so there's that part of it. So I think that, hey, you got 3 years, you had a successful 2021, but the offense, the personnel doesn't even fit now. So what's the point? You have to make a move there. And on defense, we all know that wasn't working out with Pallard. She's just not quite ready for that spotlight and that role. And so, yeah, you can say all you want to about changing coordinators and this and that, but I think we all know this is the last time that's going to happen, and it needed to happen in both cases.
Richard Reese had 2 90-plus yard kick returns. You combine the totals of that, and I think there was 1 or 2 other kick returns, and he probably had as many yards on Saturday night kick returns as he's had all year long as a returning freshman All-American running back. That just doesn't make sense. Missed some games, perhaps because you're dinged up. That just did not make sense. Good for him. He took his okay, I'm not going to get any carries he still led the team in rushing Saturday with like 6 carries. So, and I'm not saying, we don't know what's at practice. We don't know what's going on in the film work. But something was always a little bit weird, and I even asked him that in the postgame, and he just said, hey, they brought some other new guys in, and they wanted to give them a chance. Like, for example, Dominic Richardson, obviously Dawson Pendergrass, the true freshman, who's a grinder. But, yeah, you're right. Something had to change. Now, how many men on the roster? 85 to 110 or so? Offensive coordinator, Paul, Baylor's tight end position. Heavy.
Yeah.
Probably 1/8 or 1/9 of their roster is tight ends. How many of them can convert? If they looked at going to more of a wide open offense, how many of them of the 9, Craig and Paul, could probably play wide receiver?
Or that kind of split tight end. Or
they're moving on. They go somewhere else, so they could become an offensive tackle.
But if you do that, though, if you've got, say 7, favorably 7 positions, because, you're going to lose guys anyway. Like, that's just how it is. Like, if you're the 8th tight end, you're probably not coming back. Like, you'll find a place to go play. But
Drake Dabney's probably going pro. I would just assume.
So you're going to have some guys. But so say you've got 6 guys that are all still tight ends. Well, if you convert to an offense that's wide open and runs that the tight end where he's not really ever on the line, then you're going to lose most of those guys, which isn't really a thing because you don't need them, but then that's more people you have to fill. And I would also say in Baylor's commitment, if they want to go to a more of a spread concept offense, the worst position on the offense outside of offensive line in my position is wide receiver. And you're going to need more of those guys who can make plays. That's been the most underachieving one. So then if you lose some tight ends and have to get wide receivers, you got to make sure you do that right, because they haven't really hit on that all that well in the transfer portal at all. So that's going to be something you have to assess better. There's so many layers to this as it goes to moving forward and what this Baylor roster is going to be, especially in the offensive side of the ball, because you don't even know what kind of system they're going to run. And like I mentioned about Blake Shapen, Craig, you had the great counterpoint to that is like, well, what if Blake Shapen's not the guy to run the offense that they hire? Now, I would think that they'll probably, lean maybe towards somebody who likes Blake Shapen, because quarterback and offensive line are the 2 hardest things to find and work in the transfer portal. But, I just don't know. And so there's all those questions that are going to remain.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what kind of offense you run, but I doubt that it will be an offense that's running with all of the tight ends that you've brought in at this point. And, I don't know enough about them individually to say, well, this guy could be a wide receiver, or this guy could be like Sam Tecklenburg and move over to the offensive line. But, the thing about the tight end room is also just how young they are. Freshman, sophomore. And there's some juniors and seniors sprinkled in there as well. But you've got a handful of guys just in the freshman and sophomore ranks alone. And I don't know how many you need. But obviously with Jeff Grimes' offense, being a tight ends coach, he loved that position and the importance it had in what they did. But, yeah, you would think that that's probably an area that will get a little bit of a slice off the top and get narrowed down a little bit. But who knows? Let's see who the OC is going to be. I just know that there is going to be change galore in store. I can't imagine that it's just going to be, hey, Blake Shapen's back and the tight ends are all back the same and everything. I mean, there's not monumental changes, but they are, because they're the biggest changes you could make besides firing the head coach. And so since you're not doing that, all you can do is replace coordinators and change up your roster and I guess make some position coach changes. But naturally, that'll happen on offense with whoever the OC is. He'll decide who his O-line coach will be, who his tight ends coach will be, and so on and so forth. But, there's a lot of questions still remaining. We do, though, have at least a few answers now that we didn't have before Saturday, and it's a shame. You hate it, but, Grimes had a great year in 2021. They'll always have that. Everybody that was a part of that run, the best year in Baylor football history, but it was just very obvious that, look at that crowd on Saturday night. I know that was Thanksgiving, but that was apathy, and that's been that way pretty much for a good chunk of the year now. Something had to change, and besides Aranda, this was, again, all that you could really do. But I know that folks are very split on the Aranda decision itself. I don't know how much you guys have gathered, if that comes down to money, if that comes down to stubbornness, if that comes down to just still belief that others don't quite have right now. But
can it be all the above?
Yeah, sure.
It can be that the money, if you really wanted to make a change, would have been there. It wouldn't have been easy to get it. It's not like you have, tons and tons like some of the other schools who $25 million or $18 million is no big deal. I'm just throwing out numbers. Could it be that, you know what, we're going to give him everything he needs. He himself understands what he must do better, because when you have a philosophy like Aranda, and the NIL to you is like a cuss word, or the transfer portal is kind of like a cuss word, and you have been fighting against it, and then all of a sudden you lose your traction, you better learn how to deal with it and also make it work.
I think he's a lot more – he's going to be flexible because he has to be, but also where Dave has to adjust is that he put those – like, okay, we talk about Dabo Sweeney in the same way. I think we need to talk about Dave a little bit in the same regard, in that he put those governors on NIL and the transfer portal himself. Nobody put them on them. Baylor didn't put them on them. The NCAA didn't put them on them. The Big 12. Like, nobody made a rule that you didn't have to do that. He made the choice.
And I'm not so sure there weren't some, though, at Baylor that also wanted to kind of see how this thing went, too.
Yeah, I get the whole, let's see how it goes. But, when you turn around, especially in your own state, and the two biggest schools in the state, the three biggest schools in the state are
Tech, Texas A&M, and UT.
Yeah, are absolutely. And then you're not going to have as much money as them because they just have more alumni, but they're just, it's like one of those little money machines, like you would get in and you try to grab the dollars. That's what it was, that you keep throwing money in it. Well, you maybe have to be more aggressive than you thought you'd be. And I know that idealistically, everybody should make the same amount of money. That whole thing, that's great. But again, socialism's not really a thing that works. And so it didn't work there. So then you had to change it. So those things were on Dave Aranda. He made those choices himself to do that. And now he's paying for it.
And can they identify talent? And get the right talent? Can they go do that in the transfer portal and also with recruiting?
Well, that's a big question, because if you look at the transfer portal class last year, it was very miss and very few hits. Just in general with their transfers, I think it's been tilted towards the misses far more so than the hits. Siaki Ika was a hit, but he was trouble in his own right. And do y'all realize he's not played at all for Cleveland this year? Is not even active?
No.
Yeah, he's totally not. So, you just look back on, Aranda's vague comments about him and all that kind of stuff. But as far as at Baylor, he had an impact, but not nearly as big of one as he probably should have had. But he did have an impact. And there's others that have had moments here and there. But, yeah, for the most part, it's been average return on investment, or nothing really return on investment, but nothing that blows you away and makes you think. That's the whole thing when the transfer portal has been brought up, is that you think about what they've already done and you go, so how's it going to be any different? Okay, they'll go get this guy and that guy, and they'll have a few catches and a couple things that go right, but for the most part, they're not game changers, they're not difference makers. And so what makes you think that that'll be the case this time around? I guess because you're going to up your NIL game, but again, you're just now jumping into the pool that everybody else has already been swimming in for a while. So I don't know that guarantees anything, but they have no choice but to go out there and improve this roster somehow, some way. And look, like every other decision that's going to be made from now on, whether it's coaching or whether it's the roster, it all falls back on Aranda and absolutely no one else. And if it doesn't work out, then that is another nail in his coffin and no one else's.
If you do this and you make this decision,
except for maybe Mac Rhodes.
Now
honestly.
they've made the decision, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if it doesn't work? Two things. One, you're the AD. You wonder about how much more the fan base, and you can't always listen to them, but how much more can you lose them? Number two, Paul, how many coaches have been fired this year in college football?
Like probably about 12 at this point.
All right.
They just fired Rick Stockstill at Middle Tennessee, so that added to the
Dana Dimmel, UTEP.
Yeah, Tom Allen,
Indiana, $20 million buyout, right?
Yeah.
Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
It's
among
probably
some
like a
others.
dozen or so.
Yeah. So it's not. Does anyone have the magic carpet ride of coaching Carousel making the right decision?
No, nothing's guaranteed. You know, we're going to talk a lot about Mike Elko later on in the show, and while it might seem like a great hire, the thing is that the goal for Texas A&M in particular is to win the national title. The goal for Baylor and Dave Aranda to keep it is to at least get back into the postseason in year one, more than likely. And then the goal for everybody is different. So, yeah, there's nobody like, are you going to hire somebody that you're guaranteed is going to take you to the goal that you have, which for every school at this point, you know, in their hiring and firing, all right, at Indiana, what's the goal? What is the next guy going to do that Tom Allen didn't do?
And how many coaches, when they have success early, Aranda, Tom Allen, etc., get these extensions?
Yeah. And then
then you're stuck with that because you're bidding against yourself. Or
Exactly.
you think you are
But
bidding against other schools.
Yeah, I also, I think this,
Thank God David Tepper's not in the college football game.
Yeah, exactly.
The amount of buyouts he would be paying.
Oh, my Lord, yeah.
You can you can not really wait on who's available or who's not. Like, you have to react. If the guy who's not working at your school is not working, then you got to move on. And there's a lot of guys out there that you're probably not even thinking of that would be good at your school. That's why you have interviews. The other thing, though, is that it's very interesting to me because Mac Rhodes made a very unpopular decision to keep Dave Aranda. It is not going to play well. He knows that it's not going to play well, or he has to know, because he has to know what they're saying, the fans are saying. And a lot of times they're saying it directly to him. But that is a risk for a team that just went 1-7 at home, and attendance dwindled every single time after they lost. And the schedule next year is not going to have 8 home games and will be harder. So he is banking that Dave Aranda can get this back and get this back fast, because the only way to get those butts back in seats at McLean Stadium is to win games. You're not going to get it by any other thing. And bringing Dave Aranda back is a risk because the fan base did not want it.
How much do y'all think it was even weight of who would be out there and who would make sense? Like, was there at least a glance to the outside and you go, see, I don't think any of these guys will be any better, so we might as well stick with what we have, as opposed to, I don't care who's out there, I believe in who we have. You know what I mean?
We could always point to A&M, and we'll get to that in a minute, about what they thought, maybe who they thought initially might be a good choice, then what they thought they had, and then who they ended up with might have been who they should have been with in the first place, in Mike Elko, which we'll have Andrew Monaco, voice of A&M. He'll join us at 4:30. Also, Sam Kahn is at College Station, but he was also in the Waco area today. We'll have him on at 4:45. So, Aranda's back. Grimes is out. Offensive coordinator comes in. He's going to want probably at least one position. The one position coach that normally is attached to the offensive coordinator is the offensive line coach. Eric Mateos understands the business. If he hangs around, that's good. Good for him. He also understands the business. If, in fact, you're a head coach, you come in, strength and conditioning coach is one of the first things you add. That person comes with the head coach or whoever he wants. So defensively, with the changes, Aranda, Pallage is back, a little bit different role, still handling special teams, which was, hit and miss on Saturday.
No, actually, right? Maybe they hired a special teams coach last year. in the offseason. Pallage was not coaching special teams.
I think he still has a pretty good.
Okay, well, he's not. That's not his role. He's safeties and defensive coordinator.
But I don't think you change. I don't see any changes. Do you on the defensive side of the ball? With the news now that Aranda will take that over.
Unless somebody leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody left. I mean, but I think, I think Dave Aranda is going to have to start calling the defense. I think that's, he's a defensive head coach. He's got, he can't have a defense that's that bad. And so he's going to, I know he didn't, a lot of coaches don't want to do that when they're head coaches. And I think in a lot of regards, that's a great idea. But when you're in the situation where you've got the superpower to help it, then you probably have to until you can get somebody trained up to take over for you.
Yeah, I mean, I hate it for Matt Pallage that, there's kind of a demotion in store, but I think it had to happen. I mean, did we all watch the same defense all year? It was very clear that a lot of the times they were not just in the proper, alignment or didn't have the proper call to defend what they needed to. And so there were some things lost in translation there. And, yeah, I think that Aranda is a defensive guy. You've got to live by your defense or die by your defense. And the fact that the defense went so sideways and downhill to the point it was probably your biggest weakness. I mean, if that's not a 5-alarm fire going off or an alarm going off, then I don't know what is. I mean, it'd be like, having a Lincoln Riley team and the offense stinks. Like, what is the point? Why does Lincoln Riley matter if you can't score points? So that's kind of how I view that. So, yeah, you better get your hands on that defensive side of the ball where you know how things operate and ensure that it gets back to form because, like I said at the very beginning of this, everything that happens from here on out, it all circles back to one guy and one guy only. There's no he's gone. There's no Matt Powell. No, he's there, but you've already moved him to the side a little bit. So what are you going to blame a position coach for all the falls? You can't do that. So it's all on Dave Aranda and nobody else. And this is going to be his ride or die season, and he's going to sink or swim, and we'll see what happens. But I think the biggest battle awaiting them is not even the transfer portal or going and finding a new OC. I think that'll all take care of itself with money particularly. But I think the battle is going to be in just fan interest and getting people excited and getting them to believe that, no, I know we brought in 10-plus transfers last year, but trust us, these 10-plus transfers are really going to work out different, and these guys are going to help us win games. And I know we brought in an OC before, but no, really, trust us, this guy's really going to score points, and because we've already done all of these things. The only thing that hasn't changed is the head coach. So, yeah, it all circles back to him, and I think the battle, again, will just be trying to get people excited about whatever this brand of football is going to look like.
One thing I want to say about that is that you're going to have the fan that says, no matter what, I will never go to another Baylor game again. That's fine. I'll never spend another nickel with them again. That's fine. It's your money. It's your time. And there's going to be some that no matter what, they're going to be in Baylor's corner forever, and that's fine too. How do you change that?
Win.
You got to win. Yeah. And is that guaranteed? No, but you need to win. And once you win, just like the post 2016, you start winning. Those who said they'd never go to a Baylor game ever again, they started probably coming back to a Baylor game. But you have to win. And not just enough. What is the standard for next year? I don't think you can get Mac Rhodes to tell you, you better win 6, you better be bowl eligible. I don't even think that's, for right now, in the discussion. Paul?
Yeah. We got a super chat. I'll tell you this. For the people who are like, I never am going to do it, as soon as your team starts winning, you forgot you said that. I know hundreds of Cowboy fans for sure that are people that are like, after Jerry fired Tom Landry, I was never going to do it again. But when Jerry turned around and Jimmy won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, I promise you, they were dancing around. But now that they haven't won, they can still pretend like they were on that high horse. They're not. If the team wins, they'll be back. Payson Cougar fan, $10 super chat. Tough ending to a tough year. Go Cowboys, horns down. BYU women's soccer in the Final Four. Go Cougars. And to Payson, I'll tell you, I hope that my Florida State Seminoles see you there in the championship game.
Yeah, we'll get into all that in just a moment.
Appreciate you. Thanks a lot for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Go Cougars.
Now,
there you go.
Mike Elko. Let's go rapid fire. We'll have comments along the way introduced. In fact, right now, being introduced as the head coach at Texas A&M after what was a messy weekend with Stoops, right? Mm-hmm. Looked like Mark Stoops was the guy. Then, the backlash was insane. A&M pivoted. And to me, Not sure why this wasn't the first choice, other than maybe talking to Jeff Traylor seriously in the first place.
Yeah, I wonder, like, I don't know if those trains necessarily collided directly of the backlash of the Mark Stoops news leaking, or Mark Stoops decided not to go and A&M had to pivot. And so then the backlash was like, well, it was never going to happen anyway. So you're lucky. Yeah, he said no. But that news probably should have never gotten out. But yeah, Mike Elko is a great choice for A&M. A&M needs to focus on this. They need their Bob Stoops, which could have been Mark Stoops for all we know, or their Sonny Dykes. And I know Sonny Dykes just went 5-7, but you can compare, especially recently, the roster at A&M is pretty talented by all accounts. The roster at TCU was really talented by all accounts when Gary Patterson got fired and he'd completely lost the locker room. And his kind of cantankerous ways had grown tiresome. So Jimbo Fisher, same thing was kind of going on at College Station. If Mike Elko can win back that locker room and keep that roster intact and improve on some things that they weren't doing, A&M can be a contender next year with the guys that they have, more than likely, but it's still a tough thing to do, especially in the league that they're in.
Yeah, I'm sitting here kind of looking down periodically to see if there's any interesting quotes that come out, because he is being introduced right now, and they've got all the pageantry set up for the big introduction. But, yeah, I'm curious to see what the final story is on what actually happened. You know, what is the actual tale of what happened with the Mark Stoops reports. And there was a lot of, like, sloppiness going on around as far as the rumor mill goes on Saturday in particular. But, a lot of well-respected reporters had the Mark Stoops news out there, and then next thing you know, I remember telling my future brother-in-law, because we had talked about it previously, of like, oh my God, I think A&M's about to hire Mark Stoops, and he just had this confused look on his face, like, what? Like, and you know what? Mark Stoops is a really good coach. Like, I bet he could go to A&M and win some games. Yeah. But is it the level of excitement that you were looking for from your supporters? I suppose not. How all that, again, unfolded, I don't really know what to believe at this point, because I know I don't trust every A&M source on. No, it wasn't. They didn't bend to pressure. This was what it always was supposed to be. I don't really believe that. I also don't know that they entirely caved to the fan base. I don't know. Somewhere in the middle. It's probably. It
worked out for the people who didn't want Mark Stoops.
Yeah,
that's all
sure.
that matters. Although if you're mad about Mark Stoops and you're excited about Mike Elko, you're an A&M fan, you're excited about Mike Elko because you know him because he was there. Yeah. But head coaching wise, they're kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all that different. Yeah. But you do know him. There's more familiarity. He's been in Aggieland recently. And so there is that. It's like he never left, or he was only gone for a short amount of time, and now he's back where he belongs. So, I mean, I could see how familiarity played into that. But, yeah, I don't think there's a drastic difference necessarily. But I can see where, Mark Stoops was a bit uninspiring, I suppose. But then again, anyways, that's a good hire for A&M. I mean, they got back to where they probably just need to be, and I think they could have gotten there, a variety of different ways. But Mike Elko made sense from the start. He makes sense now, and I think he'll do a really good job there. And, I'm excited to see what a Jimbo level of a head coach, with all the circus that's sort of surrounded that, a guy who can just go in there and get his hands dirty and, do it his way, is going to be able to do in College Station.
Mark Stoops won at Kentucky, and Elko won at Duke. Now, we know they had Cundiff before that. He had done a really good job there, but they have one where they're really known as basketball schools. Dana Holgorsen, wasn't sure about this one, done at Houston. He's out.
That one, to me, we've talked about this one a lot, is that everything was so chaotic there. They're good, they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, they're good, they're good. Oh,
he won 12 games like Aranda did 2 years ago.
Yeah, and then here they've transitioned, and it feels like they're kind of on a hilly road all the time at Houston, and they're committed full speed ahead to being a Power 5 school that wins. And even Chris Pesman, that comment he made to us, even in jest when we had him on about maybe one day Dana is tired of NIL and the transfer portal. Well, I don't completely think he was totally kidding there, in that Dana Holgorsen's a guy that probably doesn't like all that. It wouldn't shock me, honestly, to see him as an NFL coordinator one day, because you don't have to worry, but you just coach. You wake up in the morning, you call plays, that's what you do.
Justin, he won 12 games playing the bottom tier of AAC teams. He still won 12 games.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they're probably they're doing this because the last couple years, AAC, Big 12, whatever, it's just been like this a little bit too much.
Yeah.
The fan base didn't like him anymore. I think it was pretty clear that fans wanted a change. I guess the administration obviously did as well, and you could feel just sort of the angst that had been building. And even with wins, it wasn't like people were really all that celebratory over the wins, because it was almost like, damn it, he won. Now he's going to keep himself here for a while. That's kind of how it felt around Houston, and so that's no way to live. And, yeah, he won 12 games a couple years ago. That does need to be acknowledged no matter where it happened. But unlike Baylor, they decided that, enough was enough. And I guess that probably ultimately comes down to personalities as much as anything. And situations are different and unique in their own right. But quite frankly, they followed 12 wins up with 8-5. Dave Aranda went 6-7, right? 6-7 after their 12-2. And then this year, Houston goes 4-8, and Baylor goes 3-9. So he was technically a step better in both of those years, and yet he's the one that's on his way out. Much, though, to the, I think, excitement of and enjoyment of a lot of Houston fans out there who were begging for a change no matter how many games were won. So they're getting that change. I was a little bit surprised, but not really, just because, again, it just felt so angsty around him constantly that it just didn't seem like it was long-lasting beyond what he had already been able to do there. And obviously this year was disappointing. You had some good moments, some moments that were nearly great, like the Texas game, but just not enough to make it worthwhile in their eyes to run it all the way back and continue on that path. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see who they go after. There's a lot of names already being thrown out there. And I think a lot of Houston fans and probably administration, no matter how much they believe in their wallets, are pretty glad that a school like Baylor's not jumping into the fray, who would be directly competing probably for a lot of the same candidates. So is this the Jeff Traylor move? Is this, any other number of names that have been mentioned? I don't know, but I'm very much looking forward to this search to see what direction they choose to go, because this is big for them. And this was a rocky year, but they're not going to wait any longer, and I commend them for that.
All right, 2 notes and then one other note, and then we have to break on time to get to Brendan Marcello. Jed Fish, Arizona negotiations and a contract that would make him the highest-paid football coach in the school history. That came from Jason Scheer.
Good news for the Big 12 next year.
Yeah, absolutely. SMU has signed an extension with Rhett Lashley, a part of the ACC starting next year. They announced a contract extension. They're playing for the American Conference Championship.
Hunter Yurachek did them a favor and did not fire Sam Pittman.
And then also...
Yeah, there was that, but also I think, too, with Rhett Lashley, with that contract, if that was still just regular SMU, I don't think anybody cares too much about that contract extension, but the fact that they are in the ACC moving forward, that makes that a lot different. That makes that a drastically different contract extension versus doing it in the AAC. And by the way, are you going to mention their quarterback? Because that's bummer news for SMU. Preston Stone is out for the rest of the year. Had a great year, and now here they are about to go play for the American title, and they'll be without him. They got a lot of weapons, and Lashley's obviously a good offensive guy, but I hate that for Preston Stone. He was having a really solid season.
A great year. And then I'll tease this, that UTSA trying to come up with more money to help fund the football program. They've been doing that now continuously for the last couple of 2 or 3 years. And Jeff Lebby, the head coach at Mississippi State, will get into that. And what does that mean? But coming up next, we'll ask even Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. This is 365 Sports.
You don't want to miss our best price deals during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels. This month, you can save big on the truck you've been looking for, like the new 2023 Rams. Shop our great selection of inventory in-store or online today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jeweler, they they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one, commercial, farm and ranch, or residential. Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction with a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you. Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports College Football National Writer, joins us. Craig Paul, I'm David Smoak. Brandon, of all of the decisions made over the weekend, and which one was the most surprising to you?
Phew. I'm going to be honest with you. Nothing really surprised me this weekend. Everything kind of went along the way we were expecting. I guess, to be honest with you, maybe the one surprising thing would be UCLA being quiet about what they're going to do there, if anything. The administration has been quiet with Chip Kelly. They haven't told Chip Kelly or anybody publicly whether they support him going into next season. And there's still a lot of rumors out there about his job security and whether he's going to be kept around. And I know from my sourcing that potentially we could hear something here this coming weekend, because his buyout there is about to almost be cut in half when the month of December rolls around on the calendar. So important timing there.
Yeah, Brandon, it is weird that 2 weeks ago, before the USC game, he was a dead man walking. He beats USC, it quiets down. He gets thumped by Cal, of all people, and not a peep.
Yeah, lost 3 of his last 4. And the thing is, that's been kind of the problem with Chip Kelly there at UCLA. They'll have a good win and then follow it up with just absolutely stubbing his toe in the dark, making no sense. I mean, they were blown out by Cal. They put up 1 touchdown against a very bad Arizona State team and lost at home, 17-7. So there's some big issues there. And the administration there and the boosters, I should say, for the most part, aren't very happy with the way he goes about recruiting and interacts with people there at UCLA. And they believe the proof is already in the pudding. He's 34-34. He's a 500 coach. He's had more success here the last 2 to 3 years, but even that is not necessarily championship winning football, or what a lot of them believe is even going to be mid-tier football in the Big Ten.
Brandon, Saturday was a bit wild when it came to that A&M coaching search and eventual hire. Looked like it was going to be Mark Stoops, and for a little while it was, and then it suddenly wasn't. And next thing you know, it's Mike Elko, who, as we speak right now, is being introduced down in College Station. So where do you think about where the Aggies ultimately landed and the path there, sorting through all the noise? What did you just make of kind of how all that twisted and turned over 24, 48 hours?
Yeah, in 48 hours, they landed on the guy that a year ago a lot of us was saying was going to be the next Texas A&M head coach, Mike Elko. Just makes a lot of sense, and maybe should have been the guy that they were going to hire from the get-go instead of leaking out that Mark Stoops was the guy and then everybody revolting against that. I think either one of them would have been great hires, but it's just so fascinating that it was almost like it was a trial balloon thrown up in the air to see how the fans and boosters and the board would react to see if they should hire Mark Stoops. But in the end, I think Kentucky is better off. Obviously, I don't think they would have gotten anybody close to Mark Stoops' stature to keep that thing going. I mean, goodness gracious, winning 10 games every few years, potentially at a place like Kentucky, man, that's like going to college football playoff every 2 or 3 years at Texas A&M. So, but Mike Elko, listen, we all know he's very well respected. He's a hell of a coach, a hell of a defensive coach. I'm very interested to see what kind of staff he builds there. Who's he going to keep on staff potentially that was on Fisher's staff? Because obviously he's got a lot of connections to them, having previously been there for 4 years. So I think it's going to be the most interesting thing to me is what staff he builds. I think he's a good coach and a very good CEO. Open-minded, willing to be more or less on the cutting edge offensively, despite being a defensive guy. I mean, all these defensive coordinators end up becoming head coaches. They become so freaking conservative and terrible as head coaches. Look at Will Muschamp, for example, or even Zach Arnett this previous year at Mississippi State. Threw the air raid out and started running this herky-jerky system that was trying to be pro-style and run the ball all the time, without the personnel required to run it. But anyway, Mike Elko, great hire, I think. Just a weird 24 hours there.
Do you think he can maybe have a Sonny Dykes-like effect on the A&M roster, given that Jimbo had kind of become grumpy, to put it mildly?
Well, I think Jimbo was grumpy, but he's always been stubborn. And that was his undoing. I mean, he's been stubborn since Florida State. And, I mean, there was a reason why when he left there, people were kind of happy, even despite winning a national championship just a couple of years earlier. And it's funny you mentioned Sonny Dykes, because we were starting to hear his name come up a little bit more in those hours after the Mark Stoops stuff, about a potential name being thrown in the ring there at Texas A&M. But, yes, I think so. I think that's a very good comparison. And I think that's why, in a lot of ways, you saw Mark Stoops' name come up and then Mike Elko. These are guys that are just coaches. These are great coaches and great CEOs that know how to build rosters, know how to hand out power to the different coordinators and coaches on his team and empower them to do their jobs and do it the best way they can. Jimbo Fisher wasn't that guy. He was a micromanager to the T. Very unorganized as a result because he's spreading himself so thin. And I think that not only hurt Texas A&M, but I think that hurt even Florida State there in his late goings there. There's a reason why that roster was starting to kind of crumble underneath him a little bit. And I think a lot of that had to do with his own organizational skills.
Brandon, pretty brutal stretch here over the past couple of weeks for Oregon State football. Jonathan Smith, head coach, now heading to Michigan State. Your thoughts on the Spartans and the move that they were finally able to make with Jonathan Smith, and also obviously the collateral damage that brings with the Beavers as well?
Yeah, those discussions have been going on for quite some time. In fact, Mike Elko name came up there a little bit, and the reason why it cooled down was because Jonathan Smith was getting everything, and his agent was getting everything kind of hammered out there here the last week or two. He's another one of those guys, just a ball coach. You know, these aren't names. Jonathan Smith, Mike Elko, these aren't like Nick Saban or even Jimbo Fisher, like these flashy names. These are just great coaches. Jonathan Smith went into an Oregon State program, his alma mater, and got it back going by getting some great coaches, building great depth along the offensive line, and having great in-game coaching. You watch these games, he always seemingly had them in the fourth quarter in games that maybe they shouldn't have been in previous years. And then once he started building up talent and developing it and recruiting, those games started becoming wins for them. And they started at Oregon State being so much better as the season went along. His best teams were being played in November, and that's the sign of a fantastic coach. And what a hire for Michigan State, but what a sad day for Oregon State. I don't think we're talking enough about them. I mean, your conference is folding. You're losing your head coach that's brought you to some good heights there. And by the way, he played quarterback for you. Your own blood said, I'm not sticking around for this. That's got to be absolutely debilitating.
I can't say I blame him, though. I mean, it's hard. Like, you can't give him any answers. Like, who are we going to play next year? We'll see. All those things, just to me, if you have options, you gotta think about you, Brandon. To Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby, a guy we got to know well when he was here at Baylor. When he was here, I kind of always thought he was going to be an assistant for life kind of a guy. And then after that, he started building the resume at UCF and then Ole Miss and then Oklahoma and now to Mississippi State. Is this the right guy for Starkville?
We'll see. They've been going more along the lines of getting coordinators in most of their hires, other than Mike Leach here, and over the last decade plus, including Dan Mullen. And they needed an offensive guy. I mean, I think, every head coaching gig, seemingly, they go the opposite way. Mike Leach's tragic passing happens. They elevate the defensive coordinator, Zach Arnett. That was a complete freaking failure. Just terrible coaching. And I think he did a disservice to that staff and also the players there with the talent they had. That should have been a bowl team this year. And then let's go get some offensive firepower back in here. We got to play a different brand of football to be successful at Mississippi State. And Jeff Lebby fits that. He's also a great personality. Someone's going to invigorate that fan base. He's obviously got a very good relationship with Lane Kiffin. The two of them are already going back and forth at each other on Twitter. So that's going to ignite that Egg Bowl rivalry, which is very personal and also just crazy, guys. It's one of the craziest rivalries out there about how personal it gets, but also just how weird it gets day by day by day. And I can't wait to see what he does there. Was it a great hire? I don't know. I think it's a good hire. I do wonder what kind of staff he's going to be able to build there with the resources they have. But Mississippi State can win. They can get to bowl games there, and they can challenge and be an 8 or 9 win team every few years because I think it's very underrated, the recruiting in that state, and also how they dip into Louisiana there for a lot of success. That's what Dan Mullen did. It's what Mike Leach was able to do, and I think it's a pretty good job and a pretty good hire.
Brandon, I just got note. ESPN just reporting that Blake Shapen has entered will enter the transfer portal. Baylor quarterback. Of course, they're getting ready to hire a new offensive coordinator. They have a lot of tight ends on their roster, a lot of them freshmen and sophomore. They've run the wide zone. Aranda liked it because he thought it was hard to defend. What are your thoughts about an offensive coordinator? Anybody that just jumps out top of your mind?
To be honest with you, no. And I wonder, you can't keep just firing coordinators every year or two and think that's the problem, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure you guys have discussed that too. And it bothers me a little bit because I really love Dave, and I think he's a great guy and a great coach. But this turnover and trying to pass the buck a little bit worries me a little bit. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know or even have an inkling of what kind of offensive coordinator he would want to go after at this point. I like Jeff Grimes. I do. I don't know what the fans there at Baylor think. I know it was a terrible year this year. I still believe in the guy. I mean, heck, his name was coming up to me in the coaching carousel last year about potential being a head coach very soon. I mean, you don't just cool off overnight like that. So I don't know what direction Baylor goes, guys. What do you think?
I think that they can't go full spread unless they're committed to, reshaping the roster, but somewhere in between the wide zone and the full-on air raid.
Brandon, they've also, at least what you've heard, what our guys who cover this pretty intently on the website, is that they want somebody who has been a head coach or has that kind of experience, which could lessen the number of who you talk to, because Aranda's going to spend so much of his time now where he should be in the first place doing more on defense.
Man, that's interesting criteria, and it really narrows things down for you, too, when you're looking for someone who maybe got head coaching experience. And also, what makes things difficult, and I'll be honest with you, I'm going to compare the OC job there at Baylor to the OC job that's now open in Arkansas. Are you dealing with potentially a lame duck head coach?
Mm-hmm.
Who would take a job there as an OC knowing that they're probably going to be out in a year and you're going to hurt your own career? That's a very difficult position to be in if you're trying to hire an OC.
Brandon, was there much chatter in your conversations just in terms of the carousel about the possibility of Baylor opening to begin with? I mean, did you ever hear much scuttlebutt about that? Because I'm just trying to gauge what sort of an interest level there may have been, but I know we didn't really get that far down the pathway.
We were on high alert the last 3 weeks here at 24/7 Sports about the possibility there. Very much so like at Houston. We thought Houston was in a much hotter situation, but we were kind of in that sitting on standby mode. There was really 3 jobs out there where we're kind of we don't quite know, but potentially could happen. It was Houston, it was Baylor, and now UCLA, which we're still waiting on at this moment. But I will say this, credit to Baylor and Mac Rhodes for being quick to hammer all that out and go, listen, he's not going anywhere. We're going to refocus and get things going here, because the worst thing you could do, especially going into this week, right before the transfer portal and before your players meet for your end of year meeting and you have all your exit interviews, and you start evaluating the roster again, is to have this chatter hanging over. And so credit to Mac Rhodes and them for getting that out of the way. Too many ADs let this stuff hover. And I think, to me, it's the wrong way to do things, and it hurts your roster, hurts the players, and really hurts you when the transfer portal opens up here in less than a week.
Brandon, thank you for your time and insight. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, on everything from what Baylor's doing. The story about Blake Shapen, we'll discuss that. Houston, Mississippi State with Levy, what A&M's done with Elko, and now the Blake Shapen news. Not surprised. That does not even, I didn't even blink when I saw, Paul, you showed that to me.
I just mentioned it 20 minutes ago. I mentioned that he might not even be here, and 5 minutes later he's in the transfer portal. So
it's not surprising. The thing about especially keeping a quarterback is, one, they're always going to be at a premium, and two, when you struggled like Baylor did on offense this year, the reason you struggled was because your offensive line, you cannot promise him that the guys that they're going to get to protect him are going to be any better. And he shouldn't necessarily trust you right now because he doesn't know who's going to be picking those guys. So, and that's not to say that they're not trustworthy, but again, how can you bank on it?
Yeah.
If you're Blake Shapen, you've got 1 year left for sure, and maybe a COVID. I don't know how it all works. It's all weird now, but you've got 1 year for sure. You probably want to go to a place that you know that you're going to at least be playing in January.
Do you want to continue talking about this, or do you want to move on? Because I do have a couple things to say.
We got a break. We'll come back, and we'll have Mike Craven also in the top of the 4 o'clock hour, but we'll come back with a conversation.
Okay, because I do want to speak on the Shapen move.
Also, we'll have Andrew Monaco, voice of A&M. They've introduced Mike Elko. He'll join us today at around 4:30. Sam Kahn was here in Waco and also on his way down to College Station. He'll join us. And Phil Bennett on his take about Baylor's decision with Dave Aranda, taking over the defense, and so much more. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, just off of 35 in Waco. They do 2 things for you that are fantastic. One, they have a state-of-the-art technology MRI machine. It will find out the image you need, your doctor needs, what you need to know about a muscle, about a ligament, or something that is bothering you that hurts to the point where it's shutting you down or you cannot function the way you would like. Whether you're limping or you can't sleep at night, whatever that might be. And on top of that, it's $497 or less, which is an outrageously low number compared to what the average is of $1,100 for an MRI. And that's what Dr. Rob Maxey and his partners have put together. It is amazing. He texted me earlier today asking me a few questions about the Baylor football program. He and his partners have done a great job at Ideal MRI, providing you what you need, evidence along with your doctor of why something hurts. And also, for never more than $497 or less at idealmri.com.
The right call can can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgin Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgin Ford. Bird Colgin Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
All right, we have gone through as many as I think we've pretty much discussed all of the coaching changes and or those who've been replaced or those who need to be replaced. We have spent a lot of time, thanks to Brandon Marcello, across the board when it comes to a lot of things from Baylor to even Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. And then the story about Blake Shapen. Craig, you mentioned this. Entering the transfer portal, Baylor looking for a new offensive coordinator. He may not have wanted him anyway, but Shapen now will find most likely a new home starting for his last year in college football.
And I'm not surprised. Like you said, I just brought up this possibility about 15, 20 minutes ago when we were talking about Aranda coming back, and who's to say the new OC was even going to have Blake Shapen to choose from. And sure enough, he won't, because Shapen will be headed to wherever he ends up. But I can't say that I'm surprised, obviously, but I feel okay about this from all perspectives. I think Blake Shapen was an absolute warrior these last couple years with the beating that he took back there behind this offensive line, more so this year than last year. But I wouldn't want to run that back. There's no guarantee they're any better up front. And now you're changing the coordinators, and so now there's another shakeup that you have to deal with there. You're going to be in another quarterback battle this spring. Now, granted, maybe you're going to be in that no matter where you go anyways, but do you really want to have the same one that you just got done having that you just won with the same guy? I don't think that you probably do, especially with a changing coordinator where maybe that favored you previously because you were the pick. Now, like, who the heck knows? You could be riding the pine next year at Baylor for all we know at this point. So I think for his career, his longevity, and just a guarantee of probably getting a chance to play somewhere, this is his best option. And I think for Baylor, he did a lot of great things. He certainly wasn't their big issue this year. Far from it, actually. He was way down the list of reasons why they were not a very good football team. But I thought he played well, bounced back from injury, and, it didn't get really all that great when he came back, but, he played and he was tough. But I think from the Bears' standpoint, for the fan base, it's time to see somebody different. I think you've gotten your fill of Blake Shapen and what he can do and what that's looked like now the last couple of years, and whether it was his fault or the coordinator or whatever, this is the time for new. And so you're switching OCs. You might as well switch your quarterbacks as well. Sawyer Robertson obviously is the only scholarship quarterback now remaining in that room. You've got R.J. Martinez as a backup as well, but whoever the OC is going to have to bring in at least one quarterback, if not a couple, depending on what they're looking for. So I think this is one of those where you just shake hands and you appreciate you, but it's time we go our separate ways. I think it works out well for both parties and the changes that are occurring.
Paul, where's he going to go?
I mean, if he wants to go somewhere winning, that kind of limits him. But, I mean, he can help them win, obviously. I mean, I think Nebraska's going to have a need for a quarterback. UCF is probably going to have a need for a quarterback next year. Houston's going to have a need for a quarterback. So, because I don't think they're going to be, rolling out the red carpet for Donovan Smith to have that job again necessarily there. So there's a lot of places he could go. Places he could, who's gonna have a starter that's leaving where you could step in and probably win that job. Right now it's North Carolina maybe, but that's even that might be too big for
going to UNC and being a starter. Okay. Yeah, I don't see that.
Baylor in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, they had Charlie Brewer, who did a hell of a job and then eventually ran out of gas physically and then mentally. And then you had Bohannon, who had, go down as you talk about a guy that was just someone that was perfect for the system they ran the 1 year. And then, we've seen Zeno leave, Drones leave, among others leave, and now Shapen will be known for always, no matter what other games may be, and as you mentioned, Craig, taking a beating and playing anyway, what he did in the Big 12 championship with a couple of throws, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think more so his play prior to that. But then the start of the Big 12 championship, I mean, the couple games that they had to win, he played pretty well. And then, the start of the Big 12 championship game helped them get an early lead. And then, got hurt, obviously, and the defense had to go win it, which the defense did. They went out and won that thing there at the very end. So, that was a performance, though, that you felt like he was really starting to come into his own. But unfortunately, they brought it back 2 years ago, and they ended up finishing 6-7. And he wasn't quite as far along or as progressed as you thought he would have been based on how the season prior had ended. And this year, I mean, who could even tell based on the lack of blocking up front? The lack of playmakers at times also hurt him. Injuries started to pile up. So, there will be a landing spot for him. He's a tough player. I think he's got some good intangibles, but let's not make this out to be, for anybody who's unfamiliar, like some huge prospect entering the portal. He will have a landing spot somewhere, but this isn't the equivalent of like Devin Leary jumping in the portal last year or any names like that. But
that didn't work out how it was supposed to.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. But I mean, like as far as a splashy name, I don't know how splashy Blake Shapen is, but somebody out there will certainly be interested in his talents, and I hope for his sake that wherever that is, the system fits him. He's able to win some games, and he's able to stay clean in the pocket and be able to actually do his thing and sink or swim by his own merits, as opposed to it being a combination of everything, including himself and all that around him. So, good luck to Blake Shapen. I do think as you're turning the page, this is a good time for them to turn the page at quarterback as well, as I said. So I think this makes sense.
All right. Garrett Ross, by the way, running the mothership. Jack McKenzie here today as well. We will, and for those of you, in fact, let's put it up before we get to Mike Craven, the championship game weekend. Now, I know a lot of you frothed them out because what about our team? Absolutely,
I got another transfer portal. I know where this is going to be this time of season, but it's a Big 12 quarterback that y'all might be interested in.
All right, hold on. Don't tell us. A Big 12 quarterback.
A Big 12 QB has just entered the transfer portal.
Paul, Kansas State.
Will Howard has a year left.
Avery Johnson.
And he's Avery Johnson's the future. J.J. Cole.
Y'all have already mentioned him.
Oh.
Will Howard's entered the transfer portal.
Oh.
Will Howard from K-State is officially in the transfer portal. That coming down here in the last minute, actually, from Pete Thamel. So there you go. The Avery Johnson era has begun in Manhattan, and Will Howard will be out on the transfer portal market.
I thought of him as a guy that, had his unbelievable moments. I thought in the game last year against, was it TCU, when he came in for Martinez? Am I right?
If I'm
played incredibly well.
If I'm Matt Rule, minute that I can call him, I'm calling it like that is that fits so well.
Yeah, that's
Shapen's already being overshadowed in the transfer portal.
One guy's won a Big 12 title, so
no, I know.
He plays the kind of style of a Gary Bohannon type, in a way.
But he's a little bit more fluid. Yeah,
got to get healthy. He's been beat up, and as Blake Shapen too.
That's very interesting news. Obviously, you like what you've seen in Avery Johnson, but and something had to give there with Howard still having eligibility. And we mentioned like a Devin Leary, and there was a number of other names. I don't know why he's the one that popped into my head, but we saw how that worked for like name quarterbacks in the portal last season. You could go and cash in and end up at a bigger program. No disrespect to Kansas State, but would not be shocking to see him in like the SEC or the Big Ten or something like that. But yeah, that's big news. That's big news.
Some on the chat room saying that he drove us crazy because he was too inconsistent.
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of that throughout the season.
Notre Dame, 2 people back to back. Notre Dame, because look, Sam Hartman's leaving. I think Blake Shapen, if you put Blake Shapen behind an offensive line that's going to keep him clean, he's going to win games for you.
Is Will Rogers
Howard?
Will Rogers at Mississippi State.
Is he have eligibility left, or is he entering the portal?
He entered the portal, but he's a grad transfer.
Okay, and you wonder about with Levy going there, how does that affect maybe his decision? But he had to have known, or they had to give him an idea about that. That's a guy that can throw it around quite a bit.
The college football offseason really has turned into like the View.
It's the NFL.
For men, and they love college football. Women too, don't get me wrong.
It is pro sports. The NFL.
It's turned into a whole madhouse. And so, Will Rogers, that'll be something to watch. And, Jeff Lebby, there was already the talks. I mean, we haven't even talked about that. I mean, I know we touched on the actual hires and comings and goings. We haven't talked at all about Lebby being at Mississippi State. But I saw the scuttlebutt about Jackson Arnold and whether he would be following. And it doesn't look like that will be the case based on some early reporting I saw just a little while ago. But
if you're at Oklahoma,
there's a lot of teams that are going to need quarterbacks. So Will Howard, Blake Shapen, they're going to have options.
Where would you rather be? And this is with all due respect to Lebby and what he could do at Starkville. If you're Jackson Arnold and you're at Oklahoma, even with Lebby leaving, why would you leave Oklahoma?
Oh no, you're gonna stay there. And look, if I'm Oklahoma, I'll tell you, if you want me to do a top 5 of OCs that Oklahoma should hire, I'll give you 5 names: Philip Montgomery, and Philip Montgomery.
Seth Luttrell.
Yeah.
But I hear where you're coming from there. But Seth Luttrell, I think being a Sooner, that and the familiarity having been around, I think that he's a guy that name immediately jumped out to a lot of folks. But they're going to have options. And if you're Jackson Arnold, I know I'm biased, but that's not even a contest to me unless you just have, and we wouldn't be privy to this, unless you just have such an incredible relationship with Jeff Lebby that's like the reason why you went to Oklahoma. But I'd have to imagine at this point everything else has kind of sunk its claws in. It's your job next year. You're going to have a great OC who's going to have an open offense that's going to fit you. So, wasn't surprised to see that at least mentioned. But to the point of all this, how many guys are in the portal? How many spots are open? What big schools, especially when you start talking about the NIL factor in all of this. But Will Howard jumping in. I know that is, as some K-State fan, that is some sense of relief. Like, you're ready for the Avery Johnson show full bore. So I think there will be a difference of opinions. Like I've seen already on someone shaping of like, man, that's a bummer. I hate to see him go. And then there's some that are like, thank God, finally we're going to have a new quarterback.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the case, I think, with just about every one of these types of calls. But Will Howard, just on name value alone, that is a big splash that just came down.
All right, so earlier today, Mike Craven, who writes for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, which is very much high school football, but also very much college football. I had a chance. He was on his way to College Station to visit with him about the Dave Aranda story and more. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. David Smoak, 365 Sports. Mike, what was your reaction when you saw where Baylor was going to retain Dave Aranda moving forward?
I was surprised. Three losing seasons in 4 years. The way that they played down the stretch, just with the fan reactions on social media and just the mood around the program. If I was a betting man, I would have had them making a change. But I had heard for a long time behind the scenes that they didn't want to make one, and this was the more likely destination. So I shouldn't have been surprised. But I think with just the way modern college football is, you just expect to see one after a season like that. But they're rolling with their guy, and it sounds like Mac Rhodes believes Dave Aranda is the guy that can turn this thing around.
Do you believe that what we're being told, even last week, the NIL increase, offensive changes, offensive coordinator, do you believe that it's enough? That it can just change who they've been for the last 3 to 4 years?
I think it can. I don't know if it will, but I definitely think it can. I think one of the advantages to modern college football, despite all the ills that we talk about all the time, is you can turn over a roster pretty quickly. We've seen that at a few other places in the country. So if he can get a couple defensive playmakers in there and get the offense figured out with the new OC, who I'd imagine would have his connections to some players as well, I do think that in the new look Big 12, without Texas, without Oklahoma, that there is a route back to the top in the way that they made that change from 2020 to 2021. One of the things I like about Dave is he's somebody who's introspective and doesn't mind changing things up. Like, he knows he messed up with the portal and he went in a different direction there. I think he knows that he needs to be more involved with NIL, and they're going to make a change there. We'll have to see if it's enough to make a difference, but I do think in today's world you can make a year-to-year turnaround quicker than ever before.
As an AD, Mac Rhodes, the easiest thing he could have done was fire Dave. Move on. Everybody would have been happy just because there's a change. How unique is it in this day and age you've discussed that, well, yesterday they were another handful of coaches who were fired, and at Baylor they're going to remain patient?
Yeah, I think it's truly an outlier, right? I mean, Houston fired a coach who won 12 games 2 years ago as well. He won 8 games last year, and then he didn't have a good year as a brand new member of the Big 12. And they paid him about $15 million to go away. And so, I think one of the things here is it speaks to how much likability helps keep guys around. Like, if you didn't like working with Dave Aranda probably is not there anymore. I don't know if people like working with Dana Holgorsen, so Dana Holgerson's not there anymore. It's a lesson to all of us that if you're pleasant, if you're a good person, if people like working with you, you tend to get a little bit more grace than you would otherwise.
Should that be a reason to keep him, or is that just one reason at least to look for another reason to keep him?
I think it's the reason to look for another reason to keep him, right? You like him, you like what he's doing, you like the fit he is at your university. Remember, this isn't a big public school, right? This is a private Christian university. There's some stuff that goes on with that. Dave's the perfect fit there. I think the biggest part of this is that Dave Aranda is going to be the defensive coordinator. He is unquestionably one of the 5 to 10 best defensive minds in college football and has been for a long time. If he's calling that defense and that defense gets back to being closer to 2021, all of a sudden, if the Baylor offense can score 30 points a game, this is a 9-3, 10-2 football team again with the schedule and the way it looks next year. So they're banking on Dave Aranda, the defensive mind, I believe, as much as they are Dave Aranda, the head coach.
I've heard, and Mac has told us this before, that he's still continuing to learn about or becoming a better head coach. With him spending more time there, that means less time perhaps as a head coach. How critical, then, is the hire of the offensive coordinator with that kind of experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, this offensive coordinator hire is going to determine if Dave Aranda is the head coach at Baylor for 2024 or if Dave Aranda is the head coach at Baylor for beyond that, right? So it is the most important hire of his tenure. He has to get this right, and because he's going back to being the play caller on defense. It's going to be a guy who's been a head coach before. I mean, you would know this more than me, but it always felt like during the Art Briles era, Art Briles was the head coach of offense, and Phil Bennett was the head coach of defense. I think this is going to mirror something like that, but with Dave on defense and whoever they hire offensively kind of being the guy, the figurehead on that side of the ball.
One other note, Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Mike Elko introduced at A&M. You mentioned Houston. There's a couple of other jobs that also opened. It almost was Kentucky, but that didn't happen. How sloppy was the A&M search, and in the end, did they get who they should have hired in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, the second question, I believe, is pretty easy. I do think Mike Elko was the perfect fit. You know, Jimbo Fisher was 34-12 when Elko was his defensive coordinator at A&M. He was 12-12 when Elko wasn't his defensive coordinator. I think bringing in a guy who can keep a lot of that roster intact will help for 2024 because, let's face it, A&M wants to beat Texas next year. They didn't want to reset completely and lose the whole roster. They wanted to hire somebody that can keep a lot of those guys around and give them a chance to be competitive right away. But it was no doubt sloppy. You know, I think Texas has had this problem. A&M clearly has this problem. It is nice to have a bunch of people who give a lot of money. The downside is when you give that amount of money, you feel like you have an opinion. They have so many opinions in the room, it's hard to come to a consensus. Mark Stoops obviously was not a guy that they felt comfortable with, and it has a lot of egg on their face. And so, I think Mike Elko is facing a tough job. It was always going to look bad when you replace a guy who just got paid $76 million to go away. But with the way they handled this coaching search, he's under a lot of pressure to win and win right away.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, 365 Sports.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist's office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
For those of you who have teams that are successful, congratulations, the conference championship weekend coming up. Our good friend Phil Venzer lives in Vegas. He's so pumped up, UNLV. What a nice run for Barry Odom and what they're doing. Here are, and this is from yesterday, the college football conference championship game odds. The spread and the over-under. Oregon, Washington State. Oregon's already, of course, played Washington. Oregon, an 8-point favorite.
They've been playing so well since then, and they're not playing at Washington now. They're playing in Las Vegas. So,
That's right.
I think Oregon's just on fire, and Washington is winning games. Washington and Florida State are kind of the same team right now. They're winning, but it doesn't look, like Oregon's wins do.
All right.
Yeah, I know that. There's actual games going on. I know that the carousel is like the hot thing, but there's actual games that are still being played. It's wild how much the off-field stuff can take precedent. But, yeah, we still got a little bit of a ways to go here. That was a really fun weekend. That nearly got really chaotic. I mean, that nearly got bonkers, with Washington in particular being one of those results that could have gone the other way and really shaking some things up. If you're a Texas fan, how much were you living or dying by some of those games on Saturday, just your path to the playoff and whatnot? But, yeah, I'm not surprised to see Oregon as a favorite. I think that it was a very close game the first time around. And this second time around, I know that there's a lot of thoughts that it will be different and that Oregon has been a better team since then, whereas Washington, hasn't been as impressive. So, no surprise, but that's the best matchup that you could have possibly hoped for if you were the Pack in your grand send-off, your final game. I know there will be bowl games technically, but this is as good as you could get, and this is going to be a lot of fun.
All right, we got about 2 minutes here. Then Andrew Monaco is going to join us. Let's go to the next one in green, Oklahoma State. My God, they were playing with fire. Brigham Young dominating that game. The Cowboys come back. BYU. Texas, a 13-point favorite. I would think they could win this game going away, but Oklahoma State finding a way. UT and Oklahoma State at AT&T Stadium.
I think this is a really unfortunate matchup for them in that the one thing they're great at, which is running the ball right at you, is the thing that Texas defense is super elite at. It's the thing that if Texas gets into college football playoff, that any of the teams that they would play are going to go, oh, crap. Like, we're going to have to deal with this somehow because they are so good up the middle. And so, this is where, that unstoppable force and movable object thing is Ollie Gordon versus that Texas defensive front. If they can do that, then they'd be the first team to do it this year. But, yeah, that's why. I mean, Oklahoma State has had a really good season, and they've dodged bullets when they've had to, just like they did on Saturday. But Texas just stops the thing that they do.
I'll never forget the game in 2005 when they won the national title. They beat Colorado like 70-0 or 3. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong, Wet Blanket and others. But I got a feeling this thing could get out of hand pretty quickly.
Congrats to the Cowboys on their comeback. That was another one of those really dicey games that turned out okay for Oklahoma State in the end. But for Oklahoma and Texas fans, man, that got so close to a rematch that we all would have loved to have seen. But, congrats to the Pokes. So what a nice bounce back. And now here they are back where they were 2 years ago, hopefully trying to close the deal for their sake this time around. But they're going to be massive underdogs. And I don't love this matchup on paper. Anything can happen when you line up the football there, I suppose. But I don't love this game, on paper, like I said. So we'll see what happens. But you talk about just toying with the Oklahoma fan base. After you beat them in Bedlam, and then you got their hopes up along with a lot of other people's hopes up on Saturday, only to rip that away there. Ollie Gordon's a freak show, but is he going to be able to run all that well against the Texas defense? That's going to be the big battle in the Big 12 title game this Saturday.
We're going to get to the SEC. That game's very close when it comes to Vegas. Also, the Michigan win against Ohio State. Does Ohio State still have their chance? You're darn right they do, even if they're not playing this weekend. And then, of course, Florida State trying to get themselves to the playoff not hosting, but playing Louisville, who was beaten by Kentucky. We'll get all of that. We're going to hear from Andrew Monaco in a moment. Craig, while he's getting Andrew locked in, does Ohio State, because the game was so close, classic, are they going to get in when a conference champion may not?
I don't think so. But, I haven't sat there and really, delve deep into it. I'm curious, though, to see the rankings tomorrow night and kind of how all that is positioned going into this final weekend. But I see your point and where it comes from. I just think there's a little bit of a logjam, but I don't know if I just give the Buckeyes the benefit of the doubt. But it is Ohio State. They've been given the playoff benefit of the doubt before, and it was a close loss to a really good team. So I can see where you're coming from there.
All right, Andrew Monaco, voice of Texas A&M Athletics, joins us. They have introduced Mike Elko. Andrew, they found who I thought should have been perhaps their first choice in the first place, the fit with Mike Elko.
Yeah, very familiar talking with Mike's wife. She said, we're home. And I think that's an important part of all of this. It's someone who gets Texas A&M, someone who has had success here at Texas A&M as Jimbo Fisher's DC. And, yeah, they wanted to make sure it was comprehensive, that they did not miss anybody who might be out there. But I think when you can target someone who has had success, who knows the players, knows success, he was the one that they brought home. And he said before his introduction that he's very thrilled to be here.
Andrew, you said something there that I thought was very key to the hire. He knows the players. This is a roster that is very well evaluated. People think it's quite good and has not hit its full potential. And the right coach to keep it together could really do some things really quickly. How much of that was a factor in this being able to retain these guys on this roster?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's not the only thing, but I think it had to be one of the boxes that had to be checked. And I think it's a reason why Elijah Robinson was the interim head coach. Obviously, his relationship with the defensive line and the defense on this team. And some of those guys who are seniors know Mike Elko very well. He either brought them in, recruited them before he left for Duke, and has a chance to coach some of them again. That's important because with the change in coach in midstream like this, there's a new 30-day window in the transfer portal that is available for all the players. So the hire, I think, needed to be quick because you have early signing period, you have a transfer portal of guys who can leave, you can get your plans started, and now Mike can also start getting a list of who he wants as his assistant coaches. It's more than just plugging in Mike Elko after Jimbo Fisher. There's a lot of things that came into play here. And I think from the moment that Jimbo was let go to the moment that Mike Elko was hired, you had to navigate that part very well. Look, the players are still going to make a decision no matter how it is, because that is available to them. But I think having that familiarity of Mike Elko will keep a lot of them because he also was here. Very good relationship with all the players, not just the defense, but the offense. And as we said, someone coming back home, I think may sway some of those decisions.
Andrew, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Elijah Robinson, but regardless, I think everybody knows his trajectory is upward, and he will be a head coach somewhere sooner rather than later. But just how do you feel that he handled the last couple of weeks, these games as the interim, and just all that came with that?
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely beautiful the way he did it, the way he put a lot of the emphasis on, hey, we need to do this for the players. The one thing he says is, I'm blessed to coach them. They're not blessed to be coached by me. And the way he reaches, I think, across the defensive field to the offensive field, I think there's a ton of respect for Elijah. Look, there were a couple times he had a chance to go elsewhere. And there were a couple times that Jimbo Fisher said, you know what, elevate his pay. Let's elevate his responsibilities. Jimbo knows how good Elijah Robinson is. With Terry Price, you had two of the premier coaches, I think, for defensive lines, defensive ends in all of college football. So they know that important. For Mike Elko to have worked with him, I think is important. Mike said he is a priority. Obviously, he could be attractive to some other schools. I totally get it. But I think it would be in Texas A&M's favor to keep Elijah here. And I don't know what role that will be, but he and Mike have worked together before. But I know that was part of the search, that they wanted Elijah to be a part of it. I think that was broached with all the coaches that they talked with. But Mike certainly knows how talented. I used to call him a rising star. I take rising out now. I think he's a star in this coaching game. So can you keep him around? I think would do wonders for the Aggies.
Andrew, can you try to explain the emotions from late Saturday night until Sunday morning?
Well, it was a roller coaster, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're for a name that we had not seen. And what's interesting is A&M tried to keep this as buttoned up as possible. There were some names very early. I'm not going to lie, guys, knowing he's not coming. The little bit. But this wasn't something where Ross Bjork and Justin Moore in the athletic department were letting out. So to me, it was a guessing game. But then when it seemed like, oh, okay, here's Mark Stoops is coming, it's like, wow, that one's coming out of the blue. But again, I think it was because of the work that was doing. Was it a trial balloon to see if that was going to go over? I honestly, I don't know. I'm in a position here where I'll believe it once it gets announced. But I was like, okay, I can see part of it. And you try to justify, well, look what he's done at Kentucky. They had some patience, did Kentucky. It's really interesting is talking with Jimbo Fisher when we were together because he was his DC. And we kept talking about Mark's name came up for the LSU job before Brian Kelly. And Jimbo was saying Kentucky's had the patience with Mark Stoops. And he's been able, maybe the grass isn't always greener because of the expectations, but maybe he was also ready to move on from Kentucky. What I think fans don't understand sometimes, and I'm not saying this happened with Mark, but there are some agents that float this out there. So these coaches get better contracts from their current schools. Some of it, yes, it is attractive, and I do want to come here. Other times it's the agent saying, hey, let's see what else we can get out of this school right now. So that's really the hard part, I think, in any kind of these coaching searches. Where is the fire coming? If you're seeing the smoke, but where's the fire coming from? The school who's hiring, the school, the agent who wants something better for his coach. That's the interesting part is you never really get that with all these rumors. Where is all this information coming from?
Andrew, the fan base is kind of stretched to the limit, right? With, expectations and hope. Does Mike Elko's kind of steady personality maybe help them transition a little bit better season to season now that the hype on, giving Jimbo Fisher a trophy without a date on it and all that stuff is past?
Right. I think there's not that he was not, because for 6 years I work with someone who I think is absolutely genuine. The thing I was saying about Jimbo is he's left this program in better shape than when he took over. And that I think is what made it so attractive, from facilities to the talent on the field. There's a genuineness though, and there's an honesty. And you guys know Aggies prize that. They know fraud. And with Mike Elko, look, he can be very honest. He can hit you right between the eyes. There's a little bit of that Northeast honesty that is there. But I think the way he embraced Texas A&M while he was here, I think the way he embraced not just the team, his players, but, he had high school children here, and they were immersed in everything that was going on here. And I think that was also some of the attractiveness to Mike Elko. Here's a regular guy at his son's baseball game as they go, throughout the season in the spring and all of that. I think because he was immersed in all of this makes it feel like here's someone who, I know he was here only 4 years, but here's someone who is coming home. I was interested to see how we were going to handle it. And the way Ross Bjork said, our director of athletics, welcome back Mike Elko, I think was important. He is back. It's a place where he's comfortable, and it's a place that he can call home.
Andrew, you kind of touched on it there, but just what was the scene like for this introductory press conference? What was kind of the atmosphere?
Yeah, a lot of excitement, and you open it up to not just your board of trustees and your board of regents and some of the VIPs, but it was welcomed by folks around here. So the Hall of Champions was full, and when he gets introduced, all you're hearing is whoops and people standing. You got the standing ovation, and it seemed to move him a little bit. You never know what that's going to be like, and to me, it was very well received. Look, you guys know it's one step in the process. You have to win the press conference, right? And I think they did that. Now he's got to win on Saturdays. Like we joked before he went out there, he said, so are you going to speak for me? I said, Mike, what do you want me to say? He said, no, we're just going to win every Saturday. Just tell them that. I said, oh, I've got it. But that's what it comes down to. But when you talk about, especially for Texas A&M, we're going to have a blue collar mentality. We're going to graduate people. You're going to get the Aggie ring. When you encompass everything, the selfless service, it's going to be more than just laser focused on my football team. I am now going to embrace all of this, the community, the school, all of that. We're going to raise good men. That's what I think Aggies want to hear. And again, to be honest like that and hold the players accountable, that's what I think is going to be just as important. Look, you got to win. The reason why Jimbo Fisher's not here, he did not win enough. You can't name a coach where they got fired for really any other reason unless it was really personal, something really bad. When you don't win enough, but to take over this program and to be familiar with some of the talent, to have better facilities that, ironically, Mike Elko's success helped build some of these facilities with Jimbo Fisher, I think really makes this so attractive, and Mike very appreciative. He was ready to be a head coach 2 years ago at Duke. He's ready to be the head coach at Texas A&M now.
I know it's Andrew is early, but what will he do on the offensive side of the football? What will he want to do, and what will he want to have as far as his staff?
He knows that he's got to score points. I think the days in college football, every once in a while, you can have that old Mississippi State, Arkansas 7-3 final. Those days are over for the most part. They stand out. That used to be an old SEC Saturday game, right? That was an old Southwest Conference final score. I think he's going to take his time and see who is out there on the offensive side. I'm sure he has an idea of what he would like to do, who is out there, who is available. And I don't think it's something he's going to rush into, but he knows the talent that he has. And I think the first step is, can you keep some of the offensive players in this early signing period? That becomes step one, reaching out. Look, he already talked to this team who's here now. Now he needs to talk to those players in the signing period. And there are some quarterbacks there. There are some running backs there. There are some wide receivers there. Can you keep that talent? And then can you match your offensive coordinator who says, yeah, I want to work with that? And that's what I think becomes so attractive. I think it becomes an attractive job. You guys also know this. There are some schools that spend all their money on the head coach, that they rotate the assistant coaches, because then the assistant coaches aren't paid what they think they are and will leave for better coaching jobs, better paying jobs. I think one of the keys to Texas A&M is they will have the money for Mike Elko's staff, attract people who want to work with this talent, but also want to stay here. I think continuity is important. Mike did it 4 years as defensive coordinator. In his last year, that was the best defense. It was number 3 in the country. Can you have that continuity? Ironically, DJ Durkin, the DC now, saw his second year was better than his first year. When you have that turnaround and you churn every year, it becomes a little more difficult. I think he's going to get someone who wants to stay here and kind of build an identity for its own. But he's going to want to have a team that can score points. You know he's going to focus on the defensive side, but you got to score points to win any kind of championships in college football.
Andrew, I know it's been a busy day. Thank you for your time. Andrew Monaco, A&M voice of the Aggies, with us on 365 Sports. And his contract, Craig, go ahead and thank you, Andrew. Go ahead and bring up a couple of those, and then Sam Comp will join us.
Yeah, so the contract for Texas A&M's brand new head coach Mike Elko is out. $11 million base salary, or excuse me, $11 million pool. That's $7 million base salary for Elko, with a lot of different incentives that you can see there. $1 million for making the CFP, $1.5 million for advancing to the CFP quarterfinals or winning the SEC conference title, $2 million for going to the semis, $2.5 million for going to the championship game, and then $3.5 million for actually winning the national title. And then there's other like $10,000, increments, $50,000 for various things, National Coach of the Year honors, etc. And you get $100K for that. SEC Coach of the Year, $50K, so on and so forth. But $11 million, that number that I mentioned at the top, that is the pool for assistants, analysts, operations, recruiting, strength and conditioning, and all that stuff.
And I like the fact that $7 million a year, by the way, is really nice.
Pretty
and
nice.
Then on top of that, you could earn up to 3.5. But again, everyone chuckle that play for the national title and win it. But there are incentives on top of that, and they're not, again, they're not going to be easy to reach, if at all. But there's also some other things instead of just, here's $10 million a year or $9 million a year, no matter what you do.
75% buyout.
Exactly. There you go.
Is the key there, too. 75% buyout for that. Also, look, if if he gets that $3.5 million bonus for winning the national title at A&M, they'll also smite all his enemies.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
whatever he wants. We'll build statues of you in other cities in Texas other than College Station. What do you need?
Yeah.
That's what'll happen there. So $3.5 million drop in the bucket for a national title at A&M.
So believe it or not, this is not like the contract that I have. So I don't quite understand all of this. But if you add all these incentives up, would he not be able to make what is that, nearly $10 million if he accomplished all those things?
No. If he was to get to the conference champion, if he gets to if he wins the national title, it's $7 million plus $3.5 million.
But would he not also check off the boxes for all the other things?
No, you don't. It's not additional.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
It's not $1 million, then $2 million.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. Whatever the tier you hit is the bonus you get.
Gotcha.
So,
Sorry, I'm not familiar with these types of things.
Yeah. All right.
Incentive-laden contracts.
When we come back, Sam Kahn, he was in College Station. Also, his thoughts about the coaching changes, a conference championship game, Texas at Oklahoma State, among others. That's next. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they've got plenty of incentive for you to make your way on over to the dealership right now because they have not only the great customer service, but they've got great prices and they have a great selection on both new and pre-owned vehicles right now over at the lot. And Richard Carr is a place that's helped me out on more than one occasion when it's come to needing to get my vehicle over to their body shop to get some work done on there. And if that's how they treat somebody who didn't even buy their car there originally, I can only imagine how they treat somebody who does buy their car, as you can do right now over at Richard Carr with all of the great deals. Take advantage right now of the fact that Highway 6 is a mess due to all the construction, so they are therefore making it easier to buy a car since it's harder to get on over the dealership. And right now, those offers include holiday savings on cars and trucks like the power and strength and a stunning interior that you can find in the GMC Sierra, a truck that has it all. Right now, qualified buyers get 0.9% financing and no payments until 2024 on new 2023 GMC Sierras in stock. Plus, military and first responders can save an additional $500. Restrictions apply, so see dealer for further details. But they are always available, whether you want to give them a phone call, check out the prices, the details over on the website, or go and visit them in person. And when you do, perhaps you're not looking for a brand new vehicle. Instead, you're looking for pre-owned cars and trucks to perhaps purchase. Well, they've got you covered there as well as they trade for the best. So there's a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock right now, around 100 used cars and trucks to choose from, all inspected with 172-point inspection and that Richard Carr seal of approval. Their financing goal is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So check out the business that's been in business for 24 years in Central Texas and has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs over that time. Run by proud Central Texans and proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, PettyClinicLowT.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Engel at the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Sam Conway at 5:25. He just wrapped up a press conference. He's been at that Mike Elko press conference in College Station. So here's, to me, one of the most amazing stats. Iowa State in the blizzard, winning in Farmageddon at Kansas State. 35 total plays to Kansas State's 102. Time of possession, of course, is out of whack. 6 of 7. K-State red zone, 6 of 7. Iowa State never got in the red zone, never had to, because their running back ran for 300 yards, and it seemed like every time I turned around, he was scoring.
Abu Sama is the running back, and then Jalen Noel scored the winning touchdown in an 82-yard touchdown, like in the middle of the fourth quarter, and it was just on a little out route that Kansas State, like none of the defenders, because of the snow, got set right, and then he was just, they didn't set the sideline. He just ran. I watching it, I was like, do they know he's got the ball, or is there snow in their face? What's going on? It was wild.
Yeah, that was a great win for Iowa State. It's a real shame that, Farmageddon with that kind of an example isn't one of those protected rivalries. Not every game's going to be like that, but what just a crazy scene with the snow and just all that came with that, having to play in that game. I think everybody probably watched that and felt like, man, that would be a lot of fun, right? I mean, I can't be the only one that thought. And now, granted, I'd say that and I'd get in there 5 minutes later, I'd be freezing and, begging for a spot in the press box, but that looked like a lot of fun to play in and a game that you dream of playing in as a football player. But wow, what a win for Iowa State. What a year for Iowa State, given how this all started. And you look at a guy like Sama and you look at Rocco Becht, and you can go up and down that roster and you look at how young they are and how much this almost benefits them moving forward. The fact that they had to turn to a lot of guys early on, but also being able to get, Sama down the stretch as, a big-time performer for you, none more so than in this game right here. So, that was incredibly impressive. A brutal loss for K-State. I mean, a brutal loss for Kansas State, and not at all the follow-up that you expected coming back with as many players as you had back. You lost some guys, but I still felt like the overall sentiment was, well, we can replace a Malik Knowles. We can, do this and do that. And I certainly didn't sense that many were anticipating a loss, with all due respect to Iowa State. For Iowa State to now finish at 7-5 and get that big win in Manhattan, dramatic type win in the snow, really a testament to Matt Campbell and what a hell of a coach he is, and what an exciting future they have there in Ames as far as now being able to take basically most of this roster and start ramping it up for next season, I mean, they should be right there in the top of the conversation as far as contenders next year based on what we've seen because of Beck and Sama and Jalen Knoll and so on and so forth. So, there's a lot to be excited about there. And as we've already seen, there's a lot of movement already going on with K-State. They're going to look a little bit different with no Will Howard at the very least next season.
Yeah, I just thought that game was just fun to watch. You'd love to play in that game. It's easy to say when you're watching it, when you got the heater on inside of wherever you are living. Also, remember Jacksonville State and James Madison wanting that waiver? They didn't need it because Clemson beat South Carolina, because Nebraska lost, and others that had 5 wins lost. They're in. They're bowl eligible.
You don't need the courts when you can just rely on good old-fashioned ineptitude.
Yeah, you're right.
So, just hope that everybody goes 5-7. And when you look around, that's the other thing about the bowl system that's got to maybe make the bowl people a little nervous, in that in this era of parity, there might be years which I think parity is coming bigger than maybe people are ready for. Because free agency means parity. It's meant parity in every single sport where it's ever been. Outside of the Patriots, name me a dynasty in the NFL.
Yeah, it's been at least in the last since the Cowboys of the 90s.
Yeah, so they don't happen all that often. I said other than the Patriots. So there's not
okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's gaps between
right.
It's not dynasty to dynasty really anymore
Gotcha.
in the NFL. Major League Baseball has a new World Series champion.
8 of the last 9 years.
Again, free agency affects that. College football is new to free agency, but parity is coming, and we've already seen a little bit of that this year. So,
isn't that weird you say that, and yet Georgia might do something that's not been done in 80 years or 90 years?
They might ride out the end of that era on a bang, but I think there's going to be years where there's going to be way too many teams, because of that. There's going to be a bunch of teams that have, the average is down. And then there's going to be years like this one where, oh, well, crap, you didn't have enough. Well, good thing that Jacksonville State and James Madison exist.
Yeah, and, it's another one of those stories.
And Minnesota at 5-7. I'm sorry.
I feel like it's another one of those stories where I didn't, want to be the Debbie Downer when we're kind of talking through all of these various playoff scenarios, and all of those hours of talk, nearly just disappeared in a matter of moments on Saturday. And this is one of those things, too, where how much was written and how much was, oh, my God, if they don't get this waiver and this, let it play itself out. It doesn't always work out in the end, but some things you just have to let them play out. And so all of that fretting was much ado about absolutely nothing, guys. All of those, there's nothing. They're in a bowl game. They didn't get, hurt by the fact that they were brand new to the scene or too new to the scene. I mean, it all worked out for them in the end. So, yeah, I mean, that was a big deal, it seemed like, for a week or two there, that they might get left out in the cold. But much like with the playoff and, sorting itself out, you just got to let some things play out. I know that's not what we do, especially people like us do. It's as much about speculation sometimes as anything else. But, I'm glad to see that they're both going to have that opportunity. They're certainly deserving of it. And I'm glad that this isn't going to be a story of, now having to go and fight a court battle, or this is something that lingers, that everything worked out the way it was supposed to in the end, and good for those teams.
All right, let's go for about 5 minutes here on this. Phil Bennett around the corner. With what we have this weekend, the what happens if Georgia wins, they're in. If Michigan wins, they're in. If Washington wins, they're in. Because those are 3. And if Florida State wins, now that won't happen because that's 4 unbeaten conference champions. Texas fans, Ohio State fans, well, what about, we've seen them happen. We've seen that before. What about if Georgia loses? Are they really going to kick them all the way out of 4?
I mean, they've got to make the conference championships mean something, and they'll have Alabama to just be like, oh, we knew they were good all along. Here you go.
If you're Texas, what's the scenario besides the obvious that makes you really nervous?
Well, the Pac-12 champions probably getting in because they'll have the best strength of schedule.
They have to. Yeah,
so if it's Oregon and they have 1 loss, they'll be in.
What if the common opponent, I've seen Texas fans that put this up there, They beat Texas Tech 57-7. Oregon went into Lubbock and won that game by 8 or 9?
3 months ago.
No,
I mean, so like, but I don't think the common opponent thing doesn't really.
The number of top 25 wins that UT will have if they beat Oklahoma State will be Alabama, and then also depending on how the top 25 comes out here on Tuesday night. They'll have a win most likely against Oklahoma State.
And Oregon already has 3, and they would have 1 against the team that beat them, and it kept them from being undefeated.
And I'm not arguing against Texas. I'm just saying it's a little nerve-wracking when you are them and who you are, and you wonder if it would have been better for them to play Oklahoma for their resume, because also Oklahoma, that means you erase one of the losses you have, the one loss you have.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those many other things. I mean, that's also taking into account the idea that that's the only game where it turns out that way and everything else just stays chalk. Like, what happens if that happens and then something else happens, elsewhere? I mean, what happens if Alabama beats Georgia? That would also matter greatly, it would seem like, in the potential shakeup. I know that's a lot of what was last week, and very quickly, like I said, nearly got sorted out in a major way on Saturday, but then Alabama wins there at the end, and that was one situation that could have gone differently. Washington wins there at the end, another situation that could have gone differently. I mean, Ohio State and Michigan was a very close game. I mean, if you're Texas, I think right now you're feeling like you need some help. Absolutely. I think it's clear you're at 7. You absolutely need some help. But what that exact combination is, I don't know. I don't think Georgia falls out of the top 4 if they lose, unless it's like an absolute bludgeoning, the likes of, it's 48-7 or something, and there is no way in hell I foresee that happening in any way possible. So, yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's locked in, Michigan, if they win's locked in, Washington, if they win's locked in, and Florida State, if they win, is locked in, and you need a combination of at least a couple of those teams to lose, and maybe even a little bit more than that if you're a Texas, I think, to get in there. Plus, handle your own business, which I think we're confident that they will. All due respect to Oak State, I hope that that's a really competitive and fun game that comes down to the wire one way or the other. But assuming that they win, then yeah, you're going to need some major help in more than a couple of contests.
Look, the easiest one is Florida State loses to Louisville.
Yes.
Then Texas is in because they would have won the conference title. They'll probably leapfrog Ohio State in that regard. Whatever happens to the Pac-12 champion will knock them behind Texas, and Texas is in if Florida State loses.
Yeah.
Because again,
you're right. Because Ohio State, that we're giving them the severe benefit of the doubt here that they would still be in just because they lost closely.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be the conference champion, and that's just not something. I mean, I know it's the last year of this, so we have to worry about it.
Who can Texas jump?
They could jump Ohio State because Ohio State's not going to play.
They're going to jump them by tomorrow.
They're going to, yeah. So the AP poll and the CFP are different things. So yeah, I think as long as one of those teams, as long as it's not.
Let's also remember the CFP standings. It's not where they were ranked when you beat them, which is kind of a silly thing. It's where they are at the end of this week. Who's ranked this week? Kansas State will be out. Kansas will be in. Alabama will be very high, but Oklahoma State will be a top 25 team.
Yeah, so they're going to have the wins, but again, the easiest thing is for Florida State to lose. Michigan's not going to lose. I mean, there's just no math in my head that says that even against a really good. I mean, I was shown what they do when they play teams like Michigan. They get punched. Like that's what happens. Like you can be tough and old school and leather helmet and all that bull crap, but when you play teams that have athletes, you lose. So that's not going to happen.
It's going to be fun, isn't it? Just to watch it all unfold.
Yeah, that's what I was saying last week. Yeah. It's like we go crazy. It's like, what if this happened? And that's part of the fun too. But I mean, the most fun's when they actually go out there on the field, and we saw some of that, this past weekend with, again, Washington having to win there at the end in the classic battle with the Wolverines and the Buckeyes there, and Texas obviously had no trouble at all whatsoever with the Texas Tech Red Raiders. But yeah, Alabama, I mean, they were nearly for all of and that was the thing I think that was annoying about last week to me of the speculation. I think the speculation's all fine, But it wasn't that. It was that the overwhelming storyline that everybody was harping on was, what if Alabama wins out and beats Georgia, and would they hop Texas? And I just thought that was a ridiculous thing to be talking about this early because, well, they got to do – like they nearly lost to Auburn after we talked about that, right? And they still have to go and beat Georgia. So I think that's – now we're closer to that, and that's more realistic because it's only one game away. But, I think that subsides now a little bit, and, we'll see. I mean, it's still potential there. But, if you're Texas, like Paul said, the easiest thing is just for Florida State to lose, and that right there should probably put you into the top 4. But, let's see where Ohio State sits tomorrow night in those rankings, where everybody else sits.
If they're like at 5 or somewhere like that, then you might have to, again, you be careful because we've seen this thing go all over the place. UT Parking, if the conference championship game doesn't mean anything, the next year forfeit the game. Don't risk injury for your playoff run. You forfeit, I know you wouldn't forfeit it. It's about money. It's about money.
But I do see his point. Like if and next year it will mean something. That's just it.
Yeah.
Next year it will. So this is the last year we have to deal with the conference. Look, the top 6 highest rated conference champions or top 5, whatever they decide. But the top conference champions are going to get in.
Yeah, so 5 of them get in. And then, again, let's not forget about the first-round buys, or at least off-week buys that teams will get, too. Justin, do they count the team that was ranked at the time you played or beat them, or where they are now? It's where they are now, but that doesn't mean you're not going to remember that a team was ranked number 8, their quarterback got hurt, whatever else happened.
Yeah, that's a good point because they'll say that, like, it's where they are now, but they'll also say, like, oh, they did beat them when their quarterback was there.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, a little bit of coaching news here, and I know especially with all the reports that were out there last week, this might fly in the face of those. So, remains to be seen. And I don't feel like you always have to have the national reporters to confirm everything because I think local people do a pretty good job. But, we'll see on how quickly this starts to get confirmed. But Chip Kelly, according to Bruin Report Online, will remain at UCLA. So you're wondering why there hadn't been any announcement of some sort or where that was going. Well, it appears as though Chip Kelly – and, with that big win over USC, is going to be back in Westwood as head coach of the Bruins. So there you go with that.
Well, so Baylor's not the only one then that decided to keep their coach. UCLA, of course, with a great start, headed to the Big Ten, and Chip Kelly will remain there. When we come back, Phil Bennett, we'll see what he has to say about what Baylor's done, A&M's done, and more. And this is 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, joins us on Mondays. Many things college football, the conference championship games are coming up. We'll get to that with Phil, Coach Bennett here in a moment. Coach, let's start with where you are. A&M hires Mike Elko. In the end, was that probably who they should have been targeting from the beginning?
Well, I think he was in the initial guys that they spoke to, and they sort of got off track with the Mark Stoops. You know, they were trying to get an SEC background guy, and it sort of, you know, actually exploded in their face when people rebelled over the AD's choice. I think it was good that they went back to somebody they knew. You know, I was hoping that they would look at Jeff also on the second, but I think because of the being familiar with him, that's why they went with Mike.
Phil, did they? With Jimbo, obviously you wanted to make a splash, but did they need practicality in College Station?
They need someone who has structure, has a plan, can get a staff together. I've said this many times. Their recruiting was ranked very high. It didn't equate on the field. And I'm a guy, I've said this forever. Your evaluation is more important than anything you do in recruiting. You have to pick the right guy. And it's so many intangibles. You know, it's size, it's speed, it's strength, but it's also who has the mentality to play at this level. It's such a mental thing, and they just didn't have, you know, if you look at them against LSU or the teams they played, their number one class or their number two class, you know, all these classes that were ranked that Jimbo had didn't have great players. And I'm not saying they were bad players, but they weren't upper level SEC guys. And so hopefully Elko can come in and get a staff together and evaluate kids and do a better job of developing them and then getting them on the field.
Coach, what was your initial impression when you heard about the Stoops rumors, Mark Stoops being the coach initially? I'm not sure how that information came across to you, but when you heard that, would it come well before the Elko news, and kind of how did you digest that originally?
You know, I spent all day Saturday with these people because I know so many of them.
Right.
The higher people start calling me, what about Mark Stoops? And, you know, your first reaction is, well, you just got rid of a guy that was a 7-5 coach, or you know, when they hired Jimbo, people don't realize it, but Jimbo had a 5-6 record. When he left, he was 5-6. He didn't coach the UL Monroe game, and so they were. It went crazy. People started calling me, "How are we doing this?" You know, this guy's been there. Well, if you compare A&M to Kentucky, the more you look at it, it's not apples and apples. It's apples and oranges. Kentucky's a basketball school. Mark has done a really good job at Kentucky, where they're tickled to death with 8-4, 9-3, occasional 10-win season. And if he had the things A&M had to offer, a lot of people thought, you know, he could get in that steady in that 10, 11 game
range. He doesn't have that capability with recruiting. The state of Kentucky's not great football. He has to go to Florida, has to go to Ohio, where Texas affords him those recruiting abilities. Now, one thing, there's no doubt, he's done a good job evaluating, but the A&M people didn't want to hear that. They were saying, hey, we're not doing this. And I think they put the brakes on it, and when the people, powers that be, told Ross, this is not going to happen. You need to get out of this. And I think they called Mark late in the night and said, hey, it's just not going to work. And of course, gave him an escape so he could, after that big win at Louisville, he could say, you know what, I'm going to stay here. And that's how it came down.
It's nuts, isn't it, Phil? How these things can happen, the backstories, and you're right there in the middle of it. You've been a part of that before yourself. All right, so Houston fires Dana. A&M gets their guy. UCLA is going to stay with Chip Kelly. Levy at Mississippi State, which we'll get to, and Baylor with Dave Aranda. They feel like they're going to increase the transfer portal, increase the NIL. He'll take over the defense. Matt Pallage will learn even more from him. Bring in a former offensive coordinator or head coach type. What say you?
It's going to be a struggle. You can paint it any way you want to. That game Saturday, what I saw this year, the leadership's got to come from the top. I don't see it. Plain and simple. You can talk about it. You can say, I'm going to do this. I saw the last drive, Matt Pallage had no one talking to him. I never saw Dave say a word. They kept showing him on the sideline, was not involved at the end of the game on the game-winning drive. Actions speak, words, are just words. I don't see the leadership, and Mac has taken a brave stance. Probably a career-changing stance with doing this. And I think we all know the coaches say, well, we're going to fire Jeff Grimes. Listen, Jeff Grimes is a good coach. Maybe they didn't have the people, and nobody was saying that 21, Jeff Grimes wasn't a good coach. Whatever the scenario, was, go back to the first year. It was the line coach, and it was
Fedora.
It was somebody else's fault. At some point, it's got to go to the top. And I don't care how many good conversations you have about the changing. We're going to do the portal. We're going to do the new NIL. Leadership and decision-making comes from a head coach. I don't see it happening right now for Baylor.
If, in fact, Dave is still learning on the fly, or in this now will be his 5th year as a head coach, he was a genius and a Jedi in 2021. How difficult will it help him? How difficult will it be for him to get any better, if that's the term or phrase, as a head coach when he's now diving in full throttle on defense?
You're going to hire an offensive coordinator that knows it's one or done. You're going to you win, you get to stay. You got uncertainties at every position. Hiring the right guy. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's coaches out there that can do the job and make vast improvement, because you've heard me say many times, coaching matters. I don't see Dave being a head coach and running the defense. I never, I know my personality. I mean, you have, if you have been the path that we've been, you would have been very involved in that final drive. I mean, and it was a drive that we knew that it was a game changer. I mean, win or lose, and you sit there and you watch it. I couldn't. It killed me, and I just don't see. I can tell you this: sometimes being in that seat, it wears you out. You lose your. I don't know if you call it your groove, but you lose your fire in some things. And for him to try to do both, it's going to be a struggle.
Are you suggesting that on the headsets he's not communicating enough during the game with maybe Pallage?
Absolutely, I'm telling you that. I would have been sitting there. All right, here we go. You talk about This guy has been a coordinator at Wisconsin, Hawaii, and LSU. Give him some. This kid has never been a coordinator. He's never, before this year, he'd never made a call. He had been on offense. He had been, and he is a good young coach. I'm not saying that. But give him direction. Give him, hey, here's what we got. You know, he scrambles. We want to be aware of that. You know, we want to, somehow on first down, we've got to get him off the stick. You know, first down was such a crucial down. And then before you know it, he scrambles and they're down the field in a matter of 20 seconds. They're just, you discuss those things. You know, and it's like the end of the Alabama game, you know, not rushing the quarterback, giving him, you know, unlimited amount of time. You can't play coverage that long. And I just think that's got to come from the top. And you know, I don't have a thing against anyone, but I've just watched it too many times this season from watching these games. You can't tell me that all of a sudden we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna do this and this, and it's gonna change. There's got to be some drastic changes.
Phil, you know the new head coach at Mississippi State pretty well, Jeff Lebby.
I do.
You know him. He's was a guy, and I'll just tell you this: when he was here, you know, he's a young coach. Like sometimes you can see head coaching a guy from the outside, from our perspective. Jeff was always someone who was a little bit quieter, so I never kind of got that vibe. And then all of a sudden, UCF and Ole Miss, and the way he's climbed up the ladder, he certainly changed that perception. What kind of a head coach do you think Jeff will be?
Well, I think one of the things about Jeff, I'm going to go back to when he was a young coach. Jeff was a really good listener, and Jeff was smart. At times, I thought, you know, people talked about Kendall. Art used to let him call plays when we had big leads. I don't know if y'all knew this. He'd say, "All right, Kendall, you got you've got this series," or "Jeff, you got the next series," and he was training them. And I remember Randy Clements telling me, he goes, "Phil, watch Jeff call these games." And Jeff had a feel for it, a natural feel. Of course, he had been a lineman, and he'd learned the passing game. Jeff is intelligent about football, offensive football, numbers. And we always felt like, you know, even when Phillip was there, we had guys, him, Kendall, you know, that he had it. And Jeff is a guy that he was a great recruiter. You know, he's a personable guy. He's a guy that he has great ability. I say this again, to listen. And one of the things I'm so proud of, I mean, really proud, when all that mess went down and everything went south, he and Randy went to like Florida Southwest. I don't even know the name of the place. But I remember they used to call me when they would be on a bus taking a 17-hour road trip. And to see him get that job is pretty gratifying for everybody that knows what he's been through.
You know, Oklahoma now needs an offensive coordinator. And what do you think they might do? They've got a hell of a young quarterback in the kid, Jackson Arnold. Your thoughts about what they might do with the Venables there?
Well, I think Seth's in the mix if he wants.
Okay.
Seth for threat.
All right.
And, you know, Seth, people forget now, Seth called some hell of a game. When I was at Baylor, and we played North Carolina in the bowl game, Art's last game, and I watched every game, North Carolina, and they were one bad call away from winning the ACC the year that Clemson won the national championship. And Seth did a hell of a job on offense. And Seth has a feel, much like with a little bit different tang than some of the Browse stuff. But he has a good feel about run pass, calling games. I think if he wants it, which I don't know if he does, I think he will be in the mix there.
Coach, any thoughts on Houston moving on from Dana Holgorsen?
I think they saw what I talked about. I think they saw a lack of ability to performance, organization, numerous things, mental mistakes over and over again. They just didn't feel like they were getting what they felt like they needed out of it. And I'll tell you, I thought it was a bold move, but at the same time, I think it was the right move. You know, you can sit there and say, well, we should have done this, should have done that. But the thing about coaching is that tape doesn't lie. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
Phil, with Houston open, UTSA is trying to find more money to help maybe spice up what they can do with the assistant coaches and their salaries. Jeff Traylor, it appeared, might have A&M, Houston, and Baylor at his fingertips. Is there a chance we're going to go another offseason and he is still not at another school or a Power 5 school?
I would be surprised if Houston didn't make a run at Jeff with what he's done. And you know, they've made a commitment being in the Big 12. Their resources are going to be better. I would sure think so because he's done such a wonderful job. You know, and this is a crazy time of year. A lot of things can happen. And I'm not saying that, hey, he needs to leave for any job, but I think Houston's a potentially really good job. And I hope he gets the opportunity to visit with him.
Phil Bennett, former college football coach, with us on 365 Sports. Craig?
Coach, there was so many interesting games from this past weekend, and now we've got conference championship weekend ahead of us. I know it's a very broad question, but a couple of things that just stand out to you, either from the games you watched this past weekend or what's upcoming this weekend.
The Texas game stuck out in my mind. I think that's the best I've seen Texas play in many years. Defensively, they're good. They're fast. They stop the run. They know what they're doing. They're coached well. And then, of course, you know, they lose their best running back, and they go in. They have the ability to run the ball. I think Ewing's is getting better. I really want to see what happens. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they'll just beat Oklahoma State, but I want to see what happens if they win that game and say Alabama does beat Georgia, where this goes, or vice versa, Georgia beats Alabama, and Oregon, how that will play out. You know, you got a pair of games, Texas Tech should have beaten Oregon, and yet, you know, you've got the other comparison games of Oregon and Washington. Those people are going to have some. Texas very well can end up in the Final Four.
Phil, all I care about is that Florida State finds a way to beat Louisville. That's all. I
will tell you this, Paul. That they showed great determination. You watched that game, and the thing that stuck out in my mind, I was really disappointed in Florida's discipline. I mean, my goodness, you know, I work with Billy. I know he's a great coach, but they were a team that just killed themselves time after time with discipline issues.
Phil, it's always great to hear from you, man. We appreciate your time and maybe get you after the championship games, and we'll know then who's going to play in the semifinals as well. We appreciate your time.
I'd like to talk about that. This was, of course, I told my wife, I hate this time of year. My phone blows up.
Oh, yeah.
Can you help me? Can you help me there? But it's a time of change. It sure is.
Is your phone blowing up for any other reason? They're calling you to see what you want to do?
You know what? This is when you're glad you're out of it. Yeah, I'm sitting out here by my pool right now with my dogs and fixing to go walk them. So life's pretty good right now, Smoak.
That's good. We want it to be for you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Phil Bennett.
Thank you, guys.
Former
Bye-bye.
Baylor, a longtime college football coach with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, I saw it mentioned there in the chat a little while ago about Arch Manning. I saw his name scroll across, and I think it was a conversation about, I don't know if that was trolling or what, about, you know, him and Jeff Levy or something. But it was interesting to see him come in the game the other night and just the reaction to it and just the feel around it.
It almost broke Twitter.
It did. I wasn't even on Twitter, but I can imagine that it did. And I just know, like, in the room that I was in, just with like a handful of people, it's just like, oh we got to see what Arch is going to do. And I think that some of the hype has been kind of silly when you really boil it down to like what we're talking about here. But then again, like, the proof is in the pudding, and you know, a lot of people wanted to see him, and we got to see a good chunk of him there in that game. And Obviously, he's got a really nice arm, can run a little bit. Some of those things we already knew, but to see him in live game action was really something unique and kind of cool to see that, even if you weren't a Texas fan, you know?
Yeah, the Mannings are a really close family. If Arch wound up at Mississippi State, I think that would really be a fracture they couldn't overcome.
No, that's not. I mean, you know what I noticed in that game? The teammates love him.
Yeah.
They were as thrilled about him being in that game as anything else other than the fact they were hammering Texas Tech. And so that will be fun to watch.
And boy, did they. That. I didn't
beat the living.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of faith about that game being all that interesting heading in. I mean, I think we were all very clearly picking Texas. It was just a matter of how it would happen. And that was one of those where you do look at Texas in the playoff and you go, dang, like if we had the expanded, they'd no doubt be in, obviously, but is there a chance they get in? And then what kind of damage could they do? I mean, you're just talking about having to win 2 more games. And they're playing really, really well right now.
They are peaking.
Yeah.
And I hate to use that term because there still could be a lot of games left, but they seem to be peaking at the right time. They had to get through a couple of games, which they have struggled with the last 10 years. They are getting a little bit, and now all of a sudden across the board. And the kicker is a weapon himself. He doesn't miss.
Okay, because of their run defense, they're a bad matchup for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Because, if you can't run the ball, then you got to get really creative. Now, there are some teams, particularly like Oregon, Washington, Florida State, and Georgia Florida State, you can take it out because I don't know about Tate Rodemaker, but though they have skills players on the outside that can maybe make up for that running game a little bit better. But, for example, if Texas plays Michigan, Michigan feels like world beaters inside their conference, but Texas has got playmakers on the outside that are able to run the ball, and they'll stop you running. So Michigan, that's a terrible matchup.
I don't know if they'll stop everybody who they might play running the ball, but they can surely possibly make them one-dimensional.
Yeah, they'll do it better than most.
Yep.
And so there are some matchups where that's probably not a good matchup for the lower team. But I think Oregon and Texas are kind of bad matchups for everyone in particular.
That'd be a hell of a game, Oregon and Texas. I'd love to see that. But no, I just, there's a lot of things to unpack from this weekend, which we can kind of do as the days go by here. But I had one of my sister's friends was hanging out with us as me and my soon-to-be brother-in-law are watching, and it was like game after game after, it was like ending after ending, like 5 minutes left in this game, and then it's over, and then you flip over, and there's 5 minutes left in this game, and that's being decided, there's 5 minutes. And we had one of my sister's friends over, and she does not watch college football. And when does this end?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's Pac-12 After Dark coming up. Like, there's more games to come. But it was thrilling just watching all these crazy results and outcomes and just fascinating storylines. And then you had the carousel on top of it, and it was a very fun, jam-packed weekend of college football. And Texas and Arch Manning was one of those highlights that you think about from this past weekend. So yeah,
it was fun. I was able to, even though I covered the game, the Baylor game at McLean Stadium, it was fun to kind of watch all this happening. And it was like a convergence of several things, and we're about to have it again. Plus, I got my email for the Heisman Trophy. That, of course, is now something to look at moving forward. I'm not voting until after I watch every game that is played this weekend, and too many probably vote too early. This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now in downtown Waco on Franklin Avenue. It is, you just got out of the holiday weekend. I'm sure that you had to bring some stuff, where you were asked, hey, can you go get this, or to bring something to the dinner, and maybe you forgot. Maybe you didn't find a good place to go. Maybe they didn't have the variety you needed. Well, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, especially for craft brews, that's the best. And for local craft bourbons, it's the best. They've got the widest selection of what you want in those two things in particular, but they have the widest selection in pretty much everything there. If it's something new, something different, they're going to have it at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. They're on the cutting edge of everything. Great customer service. And look, if you're on your way to a holiday party, you're kind of running late, and you're like, I don't want to step in, just go to the drive-thru window. It'll be over before you say Jackrabbit, and you'll have what you need and on your way to the holiday party. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, now with 2 locations to serve you.
Don't miss out on our biggest deals of the year during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Experience the adventure, style, and comfort of the new 2023 Jeep lineup, including the Grand Cherokee L, Renegade, Gladiator, Wrangler, and the Wrangler 4xe. Jeep SUVs are known for their versatility from daily commuting to outdoor adventures. Hurry in and take advantage of these Black Friday deals today and start your Jeep adventure. Shop our great selections of new inventory in-store or online at AllenSamuelsDCJ.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
This is 365 Sports. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com. I'm David Smoak. And how about the success of your auction? So good, right? With all of your great product, your aged Wagyu and more, that you're going to do something similar at the early part of December.
Yeah, so we had such a good auction that we feel like we found a different way to sell our beef. So on December 1st, we're going to do a silent auction, and it's going to be all online at cci.live. And it's going to last from December 1st to December 3rd. And we're calling it the Silent Night Auction with 12 different lots for the 12 days of Christmas. We'll have all of the information online at TexasBeefHouse.com.
TexasBeefHouse.com. Again, this is aged Wagyu beef and so much more. And this, Samantha, is going to be for the steaks. Is that correct?
Yes. It'll all be for different packages that are full of steak, skirt steak, flap steak, flat iron. It's going to be a variety. That way it's kind of like a Christmas package. All of our hamburger and sausage are still available online. And you can use gift cards not only online, but you'll also be able to use them for the auction.
So once again, TexasBeefHouse.com. Such an incredible auction that he experienced. And now again, Samantha, starts December 1st for 3 days. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we can't wait for y'all to see how this one's going to go.
I can't wait. The steaks are amazing. They are delicious, mouth-watering delicious. TexasBeefHouse.com. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at UnitePrivateNetworks.com.
All right, here we go. This 5 o'clock hour. Paul's Top 5 around the corner. Sam Conn, theathletic.com, has been busy. Who hasn't been with the last, for a lot of things, college football, coaching, carousel. Sam, you were in College Station. We had Andrew Monaco on about Mike Elko. Just your one thought about him, and in the end, did they get the right guy?
Yeah, I think they did. Regardless of how winding the process was, I do think they ended at a really sensible, logical result with Mike Elko. The one thing that I think that has really been missing from this program the last couple of years as I dove into the end of the Jimbo Fisher era was structure and discipline. And I think that's something that Elko will bring. He's a really smart guy. He's a really no-nonsense guy. And everybody that's ever worked with him, they've described how well he builds relationships, but ultimately, he's just a damn good ball coach. And I think, that showed itself here at A&M when he was defensive coordinator, showed itself at Notre Dame, at Wake Forest. And, of course, the last 2 years of Duke, I mean, he took that team to back-to-back bowls. There's only one other coach in Duke history that's done that. And so I think he's got a really good grasp now that he's had a couple years to run a program of what it takes to do that. And bringing that here to a place where he's familiar, he knows the landscape, he's been here enough times, he's recruited here. I think that familiarity with the current roster, with some of these guys on this roster he recruited, and he knows, and his coach, combined with the experience he got at Duke, I think is going to really deliver a lot of promise. I think the key is, can he keep the roster together? Because I think right now, A&M is at a place where they have top 5 roster talent. How much of that can he keep? If he can keep a lot of it, then I think this turnaround can happen a lot quicker. If they lose a lot of it, then it becomes a little bit more of an arduous process.
Sam, I texted you the other day because I reading the article about Jimbo that you and Max and Bruce did on The Athletic was really fantastic and so in depth. When you get into an article like that and have to go through it, what were the things that kind of surprised you the most about how that was kind of breaking down at A&M over the last couple of years?
I was just surprised how stubborn Jimbo was. And I think we all could tell, outwardly deal with him, but I didn't realize how stubborn he got internally. For instance, like the tidbits that we got about he hired Bobby Petrino mostly for Austin. Petrino was calling the plays, but it was still Jimbo's offense because Jimbo wanted that badly to prove that his team worked. And so that was interesting to hear. Obviously, he didn't really adapt very much in some areas. I think in some areas he did, but in a lot of areas he didn't. And he was the one. It was his program. They gave him the keys to it. He kind of ruled it as he saw fit. And I was really surprised at how disorganized things were. And I think you could see some hints of that in 2022 when you had all these suspensions for the freshmen and you saw them struggling on offense and Jimbo's holding a stack of papers that's sticking on a binder to try to call a play, and they're having to call a timeout to avoid a delay of game. Things like that certainly gave you a sense that maybe he was a little bit disorganized. But when you talk to people in the program, it was clear there was no real vision for the program. There was no real identity. It was all about just stacking all these players and calling the plays, and then let everybody else do their job themselves. And I think that the autonomy that the other coaches had is fine, but if you've got young coaches who are in roles for the first time, they need somebody to develop them, and they need somebody to help them along the way. And I just don't think there was any vision or guidance provided there at the end by Jimbo Fisher.
So, Sam, I know it doesn't matter as much now after the fact, but from your vantage point and standpoint, how real was the Stoops to A&M stuff initially?
Yeah, I think it's still hard to suss through because, you talk to people and I think you get so many different accounts of this. We just, the Ross York, the AD, who made it sound like it was a fluid process and that Stoops never officially got the offer, so to speak. So I think it's semantics, right? There's always the thing where they say, an offer is never made until it's accepted and, it's not done deal until it's done deal and all that stuff. It's clear that they engaged a lot with Mark Stoops on Saturday. I think that much we know. How far they went, I think depends on who you ask. If you ask A&M, maybe they say they got to a certain point. If you ask Mark Stoops, it certainly sounded like he thought he was getting that job. But clearly, they had to run that through the board also. Ross York had to run it through, their search committee and their board of regents. And clearly everybody didn't agree on that, on Stoops being the guy. So I'm not sure quite how far they got, but it's clear that they engaged him to a large degree on Saturday. He was clearly one of their finalists. They think highly of him as a coach. But Elko was one of their finalists too, and ultimately it fell through. I think that's one thing I would love to know. I would love to know all the inner workings of how it went and what really happened there. And it may take some time to untangle that, but ultimately I do think, as messy as they may have been on Saturday night, I think they landed on the right result.
Sam, Houston is open. Willie Fritz, Jeff Traylor, lots of names will be thrown around there. Ultimately, what was the decision with Dana Holgorsen when it came down to it?
I think just the trajectory of the program, it was not good. I think it was clear when you see the on-field play, just the mood of the program, the recruiting has not been great Right now, they have a recruiting class that's ranked 102nd in the country. It's worse than the Power 5. They only have 8 commits. That's not super encouraging at this point. You're in year 5. You're in the Big 12. You're in the city of Houston. You have a better recruiting class than that, regardless of what your strategy is. 5 years, we've only had 2 winning seasons, and ever since the 12-2 year in 2021, it's just declined. You know, they were, I think, even though they went 8-5 last year, I still thought that was a disappointing season based on what their expectations were and what the schedule was. And then this year, the Big 12 is hard, and every newcomer in the Big 12 had a difficult transition, yes. But a lot of their miscues and losses were to teams that were not legacy Big 12 teams. They lost to Cincinnati by double digits at home. They lost to UCF by double digits on the road. They fell down 28-0 to Rice in week 2. They did not score a single touchdown offensively against TCU. Those are things that I just are not acceptable, I think, anywhere. And particularly at a place like Houston that has invested a lot of money in infrastructure, a lot of money in staff salary pool, and has the fertile recruiting base that they have, the ability to attract people on the portal. It just didn't add up. And I do think in my heart of hearts, I think when Dana Holgorsen took this job, I think he had a vision for what it would be and what it would be like. And I think that build at Houston was a lot harder than he realized. And I think at the end of the day, they knew the mood was not good, the fan response and fan turnout was not good, and they had to do something to change it up.
Go ahead, Craig.
Sam, we've been talking about this, obviously, here in Waco. The retaining of Dave Aranda will move on from Jeff Grimes as offensive coordinator. We just saw Blake Shapen here in the last hour is entering the transfer portal. I don't think it was a big shock that Aranda's staying for another year, but just on your end, your thoughts on that decision and the trajectory or lack thereof right now for Baylor football.
Yeah, a lot of similar things that we just talked about with Houston in terms of mood of the fan base, trajectory of the program. It's not good. Since they went and won the Big 12 in 2021, it's been a steady decline, and it's really disappointing for a fan base and for alumni for a Baylor program that has won multiple Big 12 titles in the last decade and has played for multiple Big 12 titles as well. I am not surprised that Aranda's back, and I think a lot of it is because Mac Rose believes in Dave Aranda in a big way. And I think a lot of people there are rooting for Dave to succeed because of who he is as a person. And I understand what they're trying to do with changing the offensive coordinator and Dave calling the defense and all these, we're going to stack up the NIL and all that. I get all that. But I do have to ask the question of, if this is what it's going to take to get it to work, what are we really doing here? What does that say about who you have as the head coach? And I get it. He's a first-time head coach, and he's still learning, evolving on the job. But we're going into year 5. And I think it really puts in a situation because now you're going into year 5 that you need make or break. So how hard is that going to make to hire a good offensive coordinator when they know it's a make or break year? And you're going to put a lot of pressure on him. And are we going to be in a situation where we're talking about a mid-season change next year because they've gotten off to a slow start? Because to me, the issues on that team go well beyond just the head coach. I think there's a talent issue there. Certainly, obviously, there were some issues on either side of the ball. I don't know if those all can be fixed in one off season, but they're making a big bet on Dave being Dave, and I guess I understand that because what attracted everybody to Dave was his mind, his defensive prowess, and what he did as a defensive coordinator. But it's a big bet to make, and it's a bold one, and I'm interested to see how it works out.
Sam, thank you. I know it's been a busy few days, and we'll slow down because of the championship game. My last question for you on Oklahoma State, Texas on Saturday. UT right now is in a steamroll type mode. They are red hot, peaking, it seems, at the right time. Mike Gundy's group, they find a way. Your thoughts about the matchup itself?
Yeah, I think I haven't seen the line. I would assume Texas is favored. It should be because of the talent level. To me, this comes down to, is Texas going to play like they did against Kansas State or Houston or a game like that, or are they going to play like they did against Alabama and Texas Tech? What Texas team is going to show up? Because if the team that shows up is the one we saw last week against Texas Tech or the one we saw against Alabama, then I think Texas wins it running away. If we see the team that played against Kansas City or against Houston Houston that messes around and gets out to a lead and then plays with their food for 2.5 quarters. Oklahoma State will get you, and they showed that. I mean, BYU had them down pretty significantly the other night, and they chipped away. They've got a veteran quarterback with Alan Bowman. They've got a really dynamite running back in Ollie Gordon, and they've got a really veteran coaching staff. Gundy's been doing this before. He's been in this situation before. I think one thing that's underrated about this matchup is Sark has been in this spot as a coordinator. He's never been in this spot as a head coach in a conference championship game. So I'm really interested to see how his team comes out prepared for this one. But ultimately, I think Texas will end up winning this game. I think the talent differential is too much. And I do think they're going to – I think them having an effort like they did against Texas Tech, I think they've woken up a little bit. And like you said, Dave, I think they're peaking at the right time. I'm interested to see if it plays out that way on Saturday.
Sam, thank you for your time as always. Sam Comm with us, theathletic.com. He was in College Station with the introduction of Mike Elko. His thoughts about that, much other when it comes to Aranda, and also the game between Oklahoma State and Texas on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that, he makes a good point. I mean, like, the point on Aranda is, like, make or break years are hard for everybody. So, I mean, every decision you make, like, you don't get really any, like, oops, that one didn't work out. Like, everyone has to work.
He's already used all those.
Yeah, I mean, but, like, especially this year now that, like, every decision that, like, you cannot take, I mean, you can take a few. I'm sure you're going to have to, but developmental guys in the transfer portal, those have to be, like, kind of at the end of your list. You need a guy, like, the guys you go after in the transfer portal, and you have to get in competition with everyone else who's going to try to get them. You have to make sure you get the exact right guys that can fit what you're going to do. So this is a needle to thread for Dave Aranda.
Yeah, and it's going to leave no doubt about whether he's deserving of a 6th year. You know, like, I think there's a lot of people that feel he's fortunate to get a 5th year. There's a lot of people that would have already have cut bait with him after what we saw this past season. Guys, they were 1-7 at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
They lost 5 straight games to close the year.
Yeah.
They got embarrassed by Air Force in the bowl game last year. They got embarrassed multiple times this year by numerous teams. Got beat by everybody in the state. I mean, what are we clinging on to? I mean, he doesn't deserve anything other than everything matters and it better work, or if not, then you're up a creek without a paddle. I mean, at this point, it's year 5. So, yeah, that should be expected. You got some leeway for winning the Big 12 title. I think people have to be realistic about where Baylor is as a program right now, just like they have to be realistic at Houston and other places. I think Houston and them were in very similar spots, and Houston decided, like, enough already, we're going to go ahead and make the move. And, hey, if it works out for them, they go get Jeff Traylor, that's great. And, you know, if it ends up being somebody else, that's great too. But that doesn't guarantee anything. But what this does guarantee with Dave Aranda is it better work no matter what, or they will be in the coaching search business next year, this time or even sooner than that. And you know what? 5 years in, I think that's more than fair to everybody involved on his side of things, especially when you've been given so many opportunities to change the coaches around you. You will have had, 3 offensive coordinators and 3 defensive coordinators by the time this is all said and done in 5 years. What more can you possibly be given to turn this thing around? More NIL? Oh, they're doing that too. I mean, so yeah, it needs to be a needle or whatever the phrase is. What did you say? Thread through the needle.
Yeah.
It has to be that because this last year has been abysmal football. And so it's interesting, though, seeing all the responses. You thought Blake Shapen was freaking Charlie Ward out there or something like that. And I think that's, reaction to, I think, the anti-Aranda crowd now, which is going to be very loud and very vocal. And this offseason will be a tumultuous one where they are going to have to, be able to thread this roster with some new talent and some fresh blood, but also overcome those guys that they're going to be leaving because Shapen's the first, but he will not be the last. And yeah, how Aranda's able to do all that, Paul, I have no idea. But when you're on the run that they're on right now, and you're not winning football games, and you're getting embarrassed on your home field more often than not, that's the position you put yourself in as much as anything else. Because since that Big 12 title, as great as that was, it's been really all downhill for almost 2 years now.
Well, I do know this, that if the hire doesn't work out, it won't be the only one, but you're right. I mean, you wonder about how long is the leash, and more to come. We're not going to have Mac today, obviously. We're almost out of time. I'm not sure when he'll join us to discuss the decision-making behind it. Not really sure. And we can discuss it ourselves and also have the guests that we have on to do that as well. Here's you do the break here and then top five.
No, we got just play the music.
All right.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 candidates for Houston. You know, I felt stupid. Like, you ever, like, alone, like, trying to think of things, and then you
all the time.
You feel stupid, like, when you
All
don't
the
think
time.
So I was, like, writing down ideas for the top 5 today and, like, do this and that. And I was like, wait a minute. We have all these Houston people and Big 12 people that watch our show. Why don't I just do a top 5 candidates for Houston? Like, I've been thinking about this for 15 minutes, and 14 of it I won't get back. You know, like, it's like 14 was a waste. Like, what if I would have had a really good idea in that 14 minutes after I just done this, which I knew I was going to do this week anyway? Might as well do it today. Number 5, Jeff Banks from Texas. Seems to be making his way into some buzz about some head coaching. I know, given the whole poll assassin thing, this is pretty exciting or pretty surprising to a lot of people, but he has kind of climbed up the ladder. He's been an influential
Climbed up a poll, a coaching poll.
Yeah. I almost said poll monkey, which would have been your fault.
Yeah, that's my deal, yeah.
But no, Jeff Banks could be the guy. There's some names in here that one of them I kind of is very theoretical, but Jeff Banks, I think, could be a guy that they look at, although I do think that this search is going to come down to the last 2 names on the list. You know, seemingly it seems that way. But Jeff Banks is an interesting coaching candidate to use.
I tell you what, man, their special teams, they're good. Auburn is incredible. What he's doing at kicker. What they had what was it? Robinson ran back a kick for a touchdown. Worthy's done that. They're so explosive. They have so many weapons, but he's done a really good job.
I mean, yeah, he's the associate head coach, so he's in line to, you know, be the man sooner rather than later at another program, and, you know, been around the states at Texas and Texas A&M now at this point, knows it very well. Been at Alabama, knows the ins and outs of how it works there as well. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of a resume, I think that would be one that is very impressive to Houston and the familiarity within the state as well. So, yeah, Jeff Banks, I think, is a guy who could get some consideration.
Yeah. Number 4. And Phil Venzer, I'm sorry, but Barry Odom from UNLV. Look, been in the Power 5. He was at Missouri before. Had a little bit of success there, and then it kind of turned down. What he's done at UNLV has been very, very impressive. And they seem to be a program very much on the up. But Barry Odom, when it comes to getting another Power 5 job, this one seemed to be would be a really good transition for him. And again, he coached in the Big 12 at one twice. He was in the SEC. But yeah, he's in the he was there as a defensive coordinator when they were in the Big 12. So, yeah, Barry Odom, to me, would be a nice choice for Houston if they made it.
Yeah, I mean, did a really nice job in Las Vegas this past season, really ramped that program back up, you know, has been in the Big 12 to your point. Outside of that, I don't know if there's any, you know, a bunch of whole logical connections here, anything that ties him to Houston. It would be a step up from UNLV. I think that's fair to say. You know, Phil probably be like, no, it is. So, yeah, I mean, a guy with a lot of coaching experience. So, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Number 3, Cliff Kingsbury. He's eventually going to be a head coach again. I think I would not be surprised to see him be an offensive coordinator somewhere again for a little bit, but he's going to be a head coach again. And I wonder what he's learned from his previous stops because the biggest question about Cliff Kingsbury, you bring him in, you know you're going to score points. But the interview question that's going to be tricky for him is, okay, help me out here because I'm going to have to sell this to everyone. You had the best football player on planet Earth, on every planet, in Patrick Mahomes. He was throwing for 500 yards, 700 yards in games. And I'm not even making the 700 up. We know it happened. It was ridiculous. And they lost that game. So why are you so deficient on defense that you could not win when you had the quarterback to end all quarterbacks? And that would be the question for any head coaching job he would get. So if he can answer that question, if he's learned a little bit in that, then yes, Cliff Kingsbury, you know, I think is a guy who can pretty much run a program pretty smoothly. I think he's got charisma. I think players will want to play for him. All those things. I mean, this is the dude who coached Johnny Football and Patrick Mahomes. He's got some, and Kyler Murray, he's got some juice. But he's got a big cavernous hole that's even worse than Lincoln Riley, his current employer, on defense.
Yeah, Texas Tech was not good when he was their head coach.
Yeah.
And that was his alma mater. They were not good at really at all, and they had to move on from him, obviously. I mean, he's able to pull in some high-level quarterback talent. I think that's something he could certainly do there. He's got the history at Houston from many years ago. So he was pretty high up the ladder there at one point in time. I don't know. I understand why he's being mentioned as a candidate. I totally get as to why. Seen him, talked about quite a bit already. For the various reasons that we've mentioned. I don't know how seriously Houston would consider him, but that's certainly a name that's been floating out there quite a bit.
Number 2, Willie Fritz at Tulane. I'm sorry, at Tulane, just continues to do a great job and is a fantastic coach. My only thing about Willie Fritz is if you're Houston and you want a guy that Willie Fritz is like 63. He might be at a spot. He's living in New Orleans. We've had him on the show like 2 or 3 times. He seems to really love the Tulane job, and I don't think he's just putting that on. Like he really does love that job. That's his program now, and he can kind of retire at Tulane, and that would be great. But he does, warrant us a shot at the Power 5 because of what he's done if he wants it. And Houston and New Orleans aren't that far apart. He wouldn't have to move that far. He recruits that area anyway, and he would recruit it with more clubs in the bag at being in the Big 12. And he's one of the better coaches in the country, hands down. So Houston would be silly not to ask him.
There's something that's very funny, and this is just geography-wise, but Houston and New Orleans are actually really far apart. They're 5 hours away from one another, and that's how big the state of Texas is. But sometimes it does seem like they're kind of right there. I know what you mean. I'm not knocking your phrase. I'm just saying for people that don't realize, though, it's 5 hours away from each other. That's not nothing. And at his age, I think that, I feel like he would take a bigger job to pull him away. Is Houston that much of a step up, or is he just looking for a new challenge? If he is, then sure, that makes all the sense in the world. But as far as like a big competitive advantage and a step up, I suppose that they're making way more money now than Tulane is, but is it worth picking everything up and moving on along? I don't know. I don't know Willie Fritz at all to know whether or not that would be attractive to him, but Houston could certainly do far worse, and he would be a great hire. I do think the age is somewhat of a concern just because, how long is he in it for? What are his thoughts on the future and how many years he wants to continue coaching, that type of a thing. But a tremendous head coach. Just don't know if Houston's enough of a pull for him to want to make that trip.
And number 1, Jeff Traylor. I thought he was the best. Look, and I love the Mike Elko hire at A&M, but I still thought Jeff Traylor was the best guy for them to hire. But I think Jeff Traylor would be the best guy for a lot of schools to hire. And if somebody isn't hiring this year, somebody's probably going to hire him next year. And that we haven't talked about Arkansas a lot because we don't, we're not privy to that much information. But Sam Pittman seems to be under the same kind of thing as Dave Aranda, and that's a job that would go after Jeff Traylor. I do believe if it were to come open next year, if he does not improve. So I just think he would be perfect at it. You put him in Southeast Texas, he's gonna own that era in recruiting. He's gonna do so well, and you give him more of the resources, the stuff that you're pumping into that program. Jeff Traylor at Houston would be a home run. Home run.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to imagine that if, in fact, he doesn't get the job at Houston, that he'll have to wait another year. There'll be openings even after the bowl game. We never know. But as far as the fit, Arkansas, he's been there before. Obviously, anything in Texas would make sense. That he might end up waiting another year, which for him only makes him more valuable.
Yeah, I'm just curious what a school like Baylor is thinking. Do they feel like Jeff Traylor is a worthwhile pursuit? And if so, why wait and risk that he's not there next year? That's a very curious piece of this to me is whether they even looked that direction or not. But, this would be a great hire for Houston. Obviously, Houston is not like you typically would maybe have in most metros as, New Orleans is an LSU town, right? There's probably other better examples to give, but here in Texas, the city of Houston is not a Houston town. It's an A&M town. It's a Texas town. It's an LSU town. It's a sprinkling of other things. And it's also a Houston town, down at its core. So I do think he could wreak a lot of havoc. He'd still lose plenty of guys to all the schools that I just mentioned. He wouldn't be able to just run in there and run roughshod on recruits, but he'd be able to do some good damage and bring in a lot of talent. They'd be well coached. Obviously, a tough loss for them this past weekend that we didn't get around to against Willie Fritz in Tulane. But yeah, he's a heck of a coach, and I'm just curious now of kind of what the holdup is at this point. I mean, he's got a bunch of experience. He's been at UTSA for quite a while now. He knows the state. He knows the SEC. So yeah, like what's the big holdup here for Jeff Traylor other than just timing? And maybe it's just timing. Maybe that's all it is. But yeah, you'd have to imagine that sooner or later he's going to make a jump. And the way the everything's building up, I mean, him and Houston would seem like the most logical conclusion.
I think that his value goes up because of the schools that are, for example, Baylor, Arkansas, Houston. If Houston, you never know what they're going to do. But his value to me only goes up. One thing also to think about is where you have these openings and it doesn't work out. Don't forget, a lot of people have about the same agent. They're talking too about who's being offered, what is available. Some ADs have the same agent as coaches. And you wonder how much discussion among all of that might lead to somebody either being hired or playing the game of just wait, your time will come. But Jeff Traylor, another year, it appears, if it's not Houston, at UTSA.
Yeah, does he know what it's like without Frank Harris being on campus?
Yeah.
After all this time?
Well, he's got McCown. He's got one of the McCown kids.
No, I understand that, but
you're right. It's a different animal.
He's had 6-7 years with Frank Harris there in San Antonio with him, so it's going to be a weird year if he's back there from just that standpoint. But, yeah, they'll be fine, and he'll be good wherever he lands. But, just possibly having to wait a little longer than expected. And I'm glad you didn't include Tom Herman on here because I think there's a snowball's chance in hell that Houston would welcome him back under any circumstances. It doesn't seem like anybody's real keen on that idea given how he left the first time around, but I've seen that floated around quite a bit. Obviously, as everybody's just kind of speculating and trying to put two and two together. That
don't Ike Turner that thing.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, everybody, all of you, we had a bunch of you on the chat room, but we understand that's just a very small amount of what is watching or listening to us every day. Had a couple of more reach out to me over the weekend, bumped into somebody at the golf course who listens and watches us. I was at Waco Custom Marketplace, young man, asking me, he's a big Texas fan, asking me about what's happening next with them as far as the game before they played Tech, and also, of course, now they play Oklahoma State. Thank all of you, our sponsors.
Just want to remind everybody to subscribe while you can, while it's this hot time of year. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, as we should probably tell you more often, and hit that like button as well if you wouldn't mind.
We appreciate it. Spread the word, too, if you can't, if you have time to do that. For Garrett Ross and Jack McKenzie, for you, everybody that watches or listens to us tomorrow, and as we head into the week, there will be coaching carousel information, coordinator information, but also, yes, we start focusing in on the conference championship games with analysts of the teams that are playing each other coming up this weekend. For Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Thank you for your time. Tonight at 10:30 on the local CW 365 Sports Tonight, and good night.